and abroad, on our agriculture, our economy, our foreign relations, our justice system, our governance, our international competitiveness, our education, our world-class festivals and entertainment, sports, politics, regional cooperation, and much more. Globally positioning Dominica within the Caribbean. Join the conversation on the Global View on Q. Tune in, call us, have your say. The Global View on Q, only on Q95, the big station.
Good evening. Good evening. And a very, very warm welcome to you in Radioland at home and abroad. This is the Global View on Q. I'm your host, Sheridan Gregoire, Mr. G. It is Tuesday, the 2nd of August. It is the 31st Tuesday of 2022 and just about 8:03 in the studios at Q95, the big station. We're live on Facebook and YouTube. Please share the live, like our pages, get the latest breaking news and happenings as it happens, when it happens, only on Q95, the big station. So, as I said, I'm your host, Sheridan Gregoire, and my guests tonight, I'm delighted to introduce them. But two of my guests may not make it with us tonight. We're still hopeful that at least one of them will. One of them is traveling, and the other one, I'm not sure if you're going to make it. But my guests tonight that are with me at the moment, Mr. Bernardito, leader of the Dominican Freedom Party, and Mr. Kent Vital, who's the leader of the National Joint Action Movement, NJAM. So we are in fact continuing on our mission to revive the spirit of graciousness, of love and peace and prosperity and unity among our Dominican, Kalinago, and Afro-Caribbean people. Our topic tonight is what is the vision and the purpose embedded in Dominica's 2022-2023 national budget? We asked some questions. Will it produce work? Will it produce wages? Will it produce wealth for Dominicans, for public officers, for teachers, for fire officers, for domestic workers, for services sector workers, police officers, nurses and frontline workers, sanitary workers, farmers and farm workers, bus owners and drivers, fisher folk, athletes, musicians, artists, entertainers, professionals, entrepreneurs, Dominican-owned businesses? Will it reduce inflation and the high cost of living? And what about this elusive international airport? Is it going to become a reality? I don't. Let's see what provisions are made in there. Let's certainly hope that it will become a reality at long last. And are there provisions for the reduction of crime and violence, and for protection of women and children and the elderly from abuse, for human rights and civil liberties, and for free speech, and for elimination of victimization and corruption, and for promotion of increased social responsibility, transparency, accountability, and good governance? All of that we'll explore to see what provisions have been made for them. But because all of those things are the things that we desire, obviously, I would like to see them happen, and we hope some provision has been made for that. So, and of course, the whole question of proper procurement practices and open tenders for state projects contracts. Are we going to see any of that for some of those projects that are in there? Or is this just another election vote chasing budget? Is it? I guess we'll find out in due course. So are there provisions in the budget to ensure truly free and fair elections? As the DLP government, for example, accepted the recommendations and the draft electoral and campaign finance reform legislation that have likely been produced by Sir Dennis Byron and Dominican civil society groups. So we ask the question again, as we did some weeks ago, Quo Vadis Dominica? Are you going to have another tainted election? Remember, we heard the words of the CCG. Are you going to have Dominicans flying in to subvert the will of voters? Are you going to heed the CCG's call that Dominica should never again have elections in the current system and the current processes that are tainted? Will you tolerate yet again the rape of free and fair elections? Where do you go after the CCG's recent comments about Dominica's tainted electoral process? Will Sir Dennis Byron help or hinder the normalization and legitimization of treating and bribery or illegal voting by foreign resident Dominicans? Is the budget forward thinking toward a modern economy and society? that will benefit Dominicans of all walks of life. Is this budget putting Dominicans first? Dominicans first. Where do we go from here, Dominica? So tonight, my guests will help us unravel some of the answers about the budget and solutions for the way forward for Dominica. As usual, they will discuss the good, the bad, the ugly, and the dangerous with no anger, with no malice, no personal attacks, no vilification, no divisiveness, just bringing back civility, a caring society, and good governance. Recognizing, of course, the imperative for justice without delays and the resilience and sustainability of our Kalinago and Afro Caribbean brothers and sisters. Your voices at home and abroad take priority. Call in. Tell us what you think of the budget, what you see as the solutions for the way forward for Dominica. We're going to be welcoming your calls tonight very early. We're going to ask Lambi to open the lines very early and take your calls as they come in and interrupt our conversation because you, the people of Dominica, know what kind of budget you're facing at in your household. So please stay tuned to this space for another great debate and get the answers to your questions. Be part of the solution wherever you are in Dominica, in the region, and globally. Join the conversation on Global View on Q. Have your say as you do every Tuesday with me, Mr. G, on Q95, the big station. But before we go, as usual, we always send out a huge shout out, hugs, and much love and appreciation. A big thank you to our healthcare providers and frontline workers. We know they're doing their best to keep us safe from this deadly coronavirus and all these variants and often working under very difficult conditions. So please follow the correct advice, guidelines, and protocols. Play it safe and stay alive. So happy to have you with us tonight. Welcome you warmly, embrace you, and wherever you are in every nook and cranny, in every village, every community in Dominica, in the region, and globally. Thank you, Sherwin, keeping us on the air in liquid stereo, and thank you, Lambi, on the console directing the traffic. Lambi, I know that you will take the calls of our listeners a little later on. Don't be afraid to interrupt us. Let's make the people's voice a priority tonight. And so we'll take their calls. So let's get started. And I'm going to go first to Mr. Bernardito to get the conversation started as we pursue a goal of reviving the spirit of graciousness, of love, of peace, of prosperity, and unity among Kalinago and Afro Caribbean brothers and sisters, our nature island people. And as we explore this very consequential topic, what is the vision and the purpose embedded in Dominica's 2022-2023 national budget? Will it produce work? Will it produce wages? And will it produce wealth for Dominicans? So, Mr. Bernardito, if you open your mic, let's get started.
All right, very good. And again, I just want to reiterate what you said, Mr. G. Welcome to the listeners, and it's always a pleasure and a privilege, really, to speak to our fellow Dominicans, our passengers on this ship called Dominica. You know, it's generally people who are together, people who love to live, and it's always a privilege to engage in dialogue with ourselves. I think you started the conversation with the right set of words in terms of what is the vision embedded in this document, what is the goals, what is the vision, what is the underlying philosophy embedded in the budget. And I will tell you, I struggle to identify one. Certainly, you have to peel back several layers to understand and to look and to search for coherence to a budget. There are very nice words in there. There are, in fact, some interesting projects in there. There's well-written paragraphs in there. But you have to strip all of that back and analyze it and peel it back and then ask yourself, well, where now is the vision that I've boiled down to? And as you peel back this and dissect this budget, in my opinion, the vision is not there. It's a mirage, right? As you pull the layers back, you see it unravel because there's no coherence to it. There's no integrated development plan embedded in there, and so forth. The disintegration must happen as you pull it apart. And that is the general conclusion to be drawn from this budget. I mean, there is no coherent visionary strategy to make Dominica a different economy, to transform Dominica's economy into something different, to change the path along which our economy is developing, to offer an exciting idea that we can all get together behind as Dominicans to bring to fruition. So wherein is the vision? It is not a coherent document that points to that vision. There are, as I said, interesting ideas in there. There are, in fact, things actually we recognize as a party, as people, colleagues who have discussed those things. In fact, we recognize many of our ideas in there. There seems to be a culling and a recognition, finally, of some of the needs for these ideas and these concepts. But it has not been really interwoven and integrated, because it's not completely understood, you see, into a coherent strategy for development. So, in answer to your question, wherein lies the vision, I do not see it. There is not a coherent one in there. The other big takeaway, and I'm talking large level takeaways, and we will drill into them as the hour goes along, but the other glaring example to me that's in there when you try to distill things down to the essence is you see a lot of concrete. You see a ton of concrete. But you do not see a lot of capability building. There's concrete structures proposed and being built, but there's not a lot of emphasis on building the capability, the human techno infrastructure, the capability of the human buildings, human capital, the organization, the management structures, all the things that you need to translate these buildings, these concretes, into outcomes are not there. And without that middleware of capability, you will not get from the buildings, the concrete, to outcomes. But nowhere, glaringly throughout the budget, you see the emphasis on the middleware, which is that capacity building that we need to translate inputs and buildings and structures into outcomes. So clearly, that's a big takeaway for me. This government is not focused on building the socio-technical infrastructure to transform all these projects and ideas into outcomes. The other big takeaway from me, and sort of a historical analysis, you have got to ask yourself, well, over the past 20 years, these budgets have been similar things have been said, similar ideas have been proposed. The geothermal investment in education has been said time and time again. Improve our healthcare system has been said many times. Agriculture is important, has been used as a beating stick on the pulpit. All of these things have been said over and over again. There's nothing fundamentally. There are a few ideas, to be fair, that they have to show a few new things, but fundamentally the ideas are the same. So, have they been successful? Have these ideas been executed in a manner that have led to better outcomes for us? Over the past 20 years, the same budgets, have they created many new jobs? Have they created different kinds of jobs, higher paying jobs? Have they created a better quality of life for us in terms of safety, social safety, and in terms of social cohesion and purposefulness and a sense of destiny? Have they created better health outcomes? Have our average lifespan gone up? Have our average happiness gone up? Is the stress factor reduced? So that is what I really look at in looking at documents. Documents are easy to put together. They are slideware. They are documentware. They are Word documentware. So they are documents. They're symbols on paper saying nice things. But at the end of the day, it's not symbols on paper that matter. It is outcomes. And when you look at the outcomes that have not been achieved over the past 20 years, you have to put this current budget in the same category as all the previous ones. They say nice things, but they do not translate into outcomes that make Dominicans wake up tomorrow and say, you know what? I have a better life. My children's lives are better. Things are moving in the right direction. My wages are increasing. My opportunities to use my particular peculiar talents and skills is improved because now there are new interesting jobs that I can utilize my particular talents, not the traditional job that I could not really fit into. So that is the set of questions that we have to ask whether these budgets are leading to those outcomes or not. So there's some things wrong, and I'm talking. We'll get into the details, but I'm talking at the high level. There's some things wrong here. Either the budget, and it could be both things, and I believe it is both things. The budget is a collection of loosely connected ideas with no coherent strategy in terms of a master plan to be realized. The second thing is, and that's related to what I was talking about, the middleware, even in the government itself, it has not developed its capacity, its management capacity, to translate those esoteric and hopeful ideas into real outcomes. The outcomes that are accomplished are mediocre to not important. They say we will train 200 people in digital economy. Well, maybe some people took a Microsoft class, or maybe they took an Excel class. And maybe that's the extent of claiming, well, we have trained 200 people in the digital economy. It makes no transformational impact on our economy. And that's the sort of outcomes that this budget realizes time and time again. The third thing that you look at in this budget, and I'll stop there and we'll take the conversation forward. The other big third takeaway is the level of involvement of the government in the decision making about who gets involved, who gets trained, who gets the houses, and so forth. You see the government enlarging its footprint in its involvement in the daily lives, in the economic spheres. Now they're expanding into creating homes for private people. The government is growing. This beast of the government, this is growing. It's engulfing more and more of civil society and the economic sphere. And any good economist will tell you that's not a good thing. So what we see happening in this budget is a manifestation of the growth of the government, the beast of government. And that is not a good thing. And these are the things that we have to look at and in the context. And we will look at this context and say, well, this is good. Look at all these things the government is doing. But you need to ask yourself, should the government be doing all these things? And is the growth of the government to control every aspect of our society a good thing? And it is not. And that is the lens with which we have to view this budget.
Yes, and thank you for those opening remarks, Bernard. Very, very well said. I mean, in terms of the big picture, I think what I'm hearing from you is that there are things in the budget that are good. There are good ideas. There are things that have been proposed to get done. I mean, it's a good idea to have an airport. It's a good idea to have a great hospital. It's a great idea to have the best schools. It's a great idea to have a new medical school. I mean, it's a good idea to have all the sports facilities that we require. So these are all good ideas. But the question, as you're saying, is if we look at our past performances of our past budgets, we've had many of those good ideas in there. Question is, how many of those have been realized? How many of those have been translated into action that give us the results that we can say, listen, this has translated into more jobs, more work. It has translated into more wealth. That's translated into higher wages and incomes. So if we could look back and say, well, listen, the income of the public servants went up by 5% 10 years ago, and then 5%, 9 years ago, and then 6% so many years ago, and so on. Then we can see growth, right? We can see people's growth, right? We can see the capacity growing there, the human resource growing, and the quality of life improving, and the living standards going up. So this is what I'm talking about. So when we look at these budgets and we make those comparisons, whether it's energy we look at in the energy sector to see what growth we get there in terms of realizing our dreams that were in there for renewable energy and the whole question of resilience and sustainability, do we see that growth? But then again, we'll look at those sectors as we go along in the budget. The education sector, the housing, the agriculture, the exports, the agribusiness, the health, and so on, sporting facilities, education, and all of that. But I think one of the points that was made by Bernard Kent that is important, and I believe all private sector people will agree that they would like to see lean and mean government that is going to create the enabling environment for the private sector to be the real engine of growth in an economy. Because there's certain things that the public sector does well, and the other things that the private sector does very well, much better than the public sector, because it's not encumbered by all the bureaucracy and so on. Private sector, you have a board and you have managers and CEOs that they take decisions, they get the job done. And in fact, their tenure depends on getting the job done. They get fired if they don't get the results, right? Most public servants, they don't get fired if they don't get the job done because, their tenure is kind of fixed and permanent, right? So here's the thing I want us to look at, Ken. The big picture, we agree good ideas are there. Do we see a change or any provision to change the capacity? Where you start from the political directorate, from the ministers themselves, do you get a sense that there is some intention to improve their own capacity to get greater results in their ministries? You understand what I'm saying? Do you see what is happening that will improve the capacity of private sector, like our contractors? Do we see, for example, that we are putting our contractors side by side with foreign contractors who are there who may have greater expertise and experience, and so they learn and the skills are transferred, so that we can say in 5 years' time, our contractors will be able to take over this whole thing because they have the expertise, the skills have been transferred. But then for 20 years, if we have not seen it happen, do we have the confidence that it's going to happen? What do we see in the budget that tells us it is likely that that could happen? These are the kind of questions, Kent. Let me just go over to you, Kent, and you'll give us some of your thoughts on some of that.
Okay. Thank you, Sheridan, and good night to all listeners. Good to be here with Bernard as well. Yeah, so the government obviously don't understand what proper planning is. They don't have a proper planning framework. But let me start. I'll come back to what you asked, but let me start by saying, when I looked at this budget, especially in the beginning when they attempted to report on achievements, what I see is a budget of self-praise that is far from the reality. I'll give you an example. In the very early part of the budget, it says somewhere there, this administration has been innovative, creative, committed, and unyielding in building a resilient, dynamic Dominica, transforming this country and empowering our people. Give me a break. Are we on a different planet or something? We all know that this is just self-praise. We are nowhere close to that. A little lower down, it says a more developed Dominica now exists. Really? You mean you build a few apartments and they have not been tested by the hurricane, and you have done a few roads that any government would have done, and we are a more developed Dominica may exist? How do you judge that? By these things? What about the employment and the poverty and all the other things that you're supposed to be reporting on and you're not able to report? So I see a lot of that. But it just reminds me, and I've seen this over and over again in the government's promotion of the country, it just reminds me that this government have gotten into a mode of lying. Lying to the public, creating an impression to our local unsuspecting public in order to deceive them, number one. But the fact is, a lot of us have already realized that's what they're doing, and that's why the majority of Dominicans who live in Dominica voted them out the last time. So a lot of us have recognized that, and more of us are going to recognize that. But they seem to do that. But they also seem to be creating an impression. It's almost as if they want to create an impression out there in the world that Dominica is doing okay. For whatever reason, they're trying to create that impression, but the impression is not helping us. And definitely, they are maybe taking in front before anyone take them, so to speak. But I see they do that all the time. So when I look at some of the promotion of the economic citizenship programs, I see a lot of instances where they're just lying about Dominica. Sometimes subtle lies, sometimes not so subtle lies. So this is the kind of government we have. So you see a lot more of that in the budget itself. It's almost like saying it would make it become a reality. And it's really laughable and it's a joke, but most of us know the reality and we know the truth. That's why most of us voted them out. And that's why more of us are going to vote the government out, because they are just a disaster, pure and simple. So as Bernard rightly said, the budget says a number of things. Some of these things in themselves are not bad, but Bernard explained that quite well. But they don't seem to understand development. They plagiarize. I have a friend that said to me, he presented a proposal to them and he saw it reflected in the budget. And there's no problem in them taking things from whatever other people say, but they won't even have the decencies to say, we are very happy that our people have been speaking about the kinds of things that can work on Sheridan's program, on other programs. From this person presented the budget, and thanks to the public for giving us suggestions. We have embraced them. Thank you very much. They wouldn't even have the decency to say that. They would adopt them and use them. But this is the kind of government we have. The fact is, can they make it work? Have they made it work in the past? And can they make it work going forward? And we know the answer to that is no. So this is the kind of government. They don't seem to have a proper planning framework. They don't seem to understand development. So they take those ideas, but they don't have a proper framework. They had set up this thing after the hurricane. I don't remember the name at the moment, but I think Francine Barron is now heading it.
It's called Creed.
Creed, right. In the first place, the only reason you would have needed a creed is if in the first place your systems were bad. That's why the developing the donors, the potential donors, because many of them ended up not donating anyway, because they understood the systems were bad. And even with creed, it didn't help, because there's a basic corruption, a basic institutional problem, a basic mindset problem with this government. And even when they set up the kinds of institutions to make a difference, it doesn't work. So creed hasn't worked, creed hasn't helped. People have resigned, people have left. So they clearly do not have a proper framework for planning. Or if they do try to do one, the fact is because of corruption, because they so lack integrity, because they are not honest. They are constantly looking to benefit themselves for their own self-interest. And the systems never work to really progress the ideas, even if those ideas were good ideas. So this is what we see all the time. So, and I do know that they do have some planning documents. And when I read some of those planning documents, some of them documents are not bad in themselves. They were written by consultants. But here we go with the same problem. Good words written by consultants, but there is no fundamental intention of the government to implement those things. Their fundamental intention is to see how to benefit themselves. And therefore, the delivery, it just doesn't happen. So this is the kind of government we have, and we see more of the same in the budget. So, but you just need to look back at their, and again, Bernard, you were touching on that. You just need to look back at their performance.
Can I interrupt you 1 second? I think Lambi wants us to take a call. Lambi,
yes, certainly.
Good evening, caller. Thanks for joining us. Go ahead, please, with your call. Okay, he apologized for the wrong number.
Oh, they called wrong number. Okay, can go right ahead. Well,
right.
Can you interrupt us anytime, Lambi? We'll take the calls.
Okay, so as you read through the budget, in the first part, you will see where they are attempted to report on what they have, what they have done. And I say attempted because it's a joke. So you see, for instance, they talk about sustainable development and so on, but they're not really, and Bernard said that in a different way, but they're really not reporting. They're reporting that they're working on a plan, or they do it, or they report it to the UN on their progress on sustainable development. That's what they said in the budget, without actually reporting on some of the successes, some of the actual results. So there's no report on, and if you think of the 17 goals, the sustainable development goals, the 17 goals, if you think of them just to briefly, you could ask yourself in any of these areas, over the last 5 years, over the last 10 years, over the last 20 years since they have been there, have we had any progress? And guess what? This government actually do not produce the data, or when they do produce the data, they do not deliver, they do not make the results available because the data is not flattering to them. They are not reaching the goals, and therefore they're not. So in the budget, you see that they're reporting on they built a road, but they're not reporting on the real results, which is what Bernard was talking about. So if you look at the first goal, no poverty, are they able to report on what's going on with poverty in Dominica? No, they can't, because they're not taking, because poverty is getting worse. Or at least it's still very high, because if you don't have the data to say for sure it's getting worse, you can definitely say it's getting high. And they refuse to deliver some of the information that they have because they know that's what it says. Hunger. I mean, the second goal, no hunger. Jeez, man, we know, those of us who on the ground, we know what's going on with some people. Some people are hungry. We are not reducing the level of hunger. If we're reducing the level of hunger, well, if we are reducing it, it's through direct handouts. But how do you want to reduce hunger? You have to create economic activity. People are worse off. People are not better off. So there is no results. And you know, they will always have an excuse. You know, it's almost like I've said before, maybe on this program, maybe on other programs, it almost looks as if this government is happy to have had COVID and happy to have had Erica and happy to have had all the things that we have had in the recent past, because they keep getting an excuse and they love to raise the excuses as to why we're not going forward. But the truth is, yes, these things have affected us. No one will deny that. But the country was never placed in the position to be able to deal with those shocks. We were never on a solid growth trajectory to be able to say that, you know, this thing has brought us down. You know, it maybe have made things worse. They certainly made things worse. But in most instances, we were already on the wrong path. We were already declining. We were already, you know, one of my biggest fears is that Dominica will descend to the depths of Haiti under this government. The kinds of, I don't want to be disparaging about Haiti, anything like that. But the truth is, I know Haiti. I've been to Haiti. We know the difficulties in Haiti. And the fact is, the path this government is taking, I wouldn't be surprised if Dominica, you know, things get so bad. I actually believe we are becoming a failed state. And that is why we have to arrest the situation. I mean, the one thing that's saving us, and we'll get to that maybe when we get to the details. There's so much to talk about, so stop me anytime, because I will just keep going. But if we go down to at least let me finish this part about the sustainable development goal.
Let's take a quick call. Let's take a quick call, Kent.
Right.
Go ahead, Lambi.
Yes, caller. Thanks for joining us. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good evening, Lambi.
Good evening.
Good evening to the entire panel, Mr. G.
Yes, good evening.
Mr. G, please allow me to ask my Prime Minister a question. I know you all have a very important program. I listen to your program every Tuesday when they have a program. But every time I try to call, I get it through on map. I get it through elsewhere. So can I ask a question tonight?
Go right ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Rosa Skerrit, I have been asking you questions time after time, and without a response. But one day I was privileged to get a response from you because I spoke to you directly. When I asked you whether your police would harass Mr. Ken Vital for standing for Dominica, I am afraid, and as a citizen, I want you to help me. Whenever fear comes on me, I always rebuke it, but it continue coming. I want to ask you a twofold question tonight, sir. Will you accept the CCJ advice? Mr. Skerrit, will Dominica have a next election with a proper electoral reform? Please tell me. I want to know. Good night.
Good, thank you very much. Good question.
Yes.
Lambi, yeah, but what I'd like you to do, Lambi, give the numbers out a little bit before I go back to Ken so that folks will know that they can take their calls. We'll take your calls at any time. Give them the numbers, please.
Oh, yes, I will. This is the Global View on Q, and the numbers to access here is 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257. The overseas access number is 305-432-9624. Let me run those numbers one more time. 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257, 305-432-9624. 9624. And you may call anytime. Back to you, Mr. G.
Yes, and thanks a lot, Lambi. Okay, so just to let the folks know that we welcome their calls at any time. The budget, the budget about people. Let's take that call. Lambi, go right ahead.
Okay, caller, thanks for joining us. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good night, Lambi. Mr. G, long time I haven't seen.
Yes, good night.
Panelist.
Yes.
Good night.
Today, I listened to my pal rep, and she was very good. And when she said the truth, the speaker allowed 4 other men to bash her, There were all sorts of words saying she was not a Carib, she was not this, she was not that. I think this is not parliamentary. And what she was saying was truth. And well, the truth offends. Anyway, I want to tell Annette we are with her. We are behind her. And when the change comes, she will be our true parliamentary rep. Hats off to Annette. And I'm listening to the program.
Yes, of course. And let's also give a shout out to Miss Annette Sanford as well. She's a serious Herald giant.
Yes,
here tonight. Kent, let's go over to you so you can click with your.
Okay, so just to jump back a bit, the reason I'm looking at the sustainable development goals, because that's part of what they say that they're managing towards. The same thing goes. So if you wanted to say there was some kind of vision or something they were working towards, well, they have admitted that's what they were working towards. But in attempting to report on it, all they could say was, we have given an update to the UN system on this, but they couldn't actually report on any of the results. And we know why they couldn't, because the country is not doing good. So they couldn't report on poverty. They didn't report on hunger, and we know what's happening. We dealt with that. Good health and well-being, that's the third goal. No, we know why. Listen, it hurt my heart when a friend of mine came to me and, his one of his relatives died, and he was taking care of his relative. And he said to me, Ken, once I took her to the hospital, I just knew that was it. You get this comments constantly, right? And but let's think back. How is our healthcare improving? I don't even think we report on life expectancy anymore. And I always question why. Because I believe maybe we are regressing in that sense, in that level. So they're not even reporting on the progress you're making on cancers and control of diseases. Where is the serious report? You're reporting on building a hospital and building a building and so on, but not on what these buildings should be contributing to the real results. Quality of education, and where is the report on quality of education? Where is the report on how we are transforming our education system to ensure that we can enter into the global, Bernard, you always talk about the digital economy, the knowledge-based economy. How are we transforming the education system to do that? When we train our children, how are we able to bring them home and have them be a part of moving the country forward? What systems are you putting in place? You're not reporting on any of that, but you're reporting on how, a few things here and there. I mean, we'll get into some of the details maybe later. Gender equality is one of the other goals. Clean water and sanitation is one of the goals. But guess what? You speak to WAVE, people from the organization that's promoting a cleaner, healthier Dominica, a cleaner environment, a healthier environment. And if you follow them, you would see some of the issues that we have with our rivers, the regulations. So I mean, where is the report on how we are preserving our country and getting our rivers cleaner and getting our environment better and so on? Affordable and clean energy. You touched on geothermal. How long will we still be on the geothermal project? And then they keep lying about the geothermal project. For instance, they keep making it look as if that this project is going to deliver better results compared to electricity bills and so on. I don't think that may be so at the scale at which they're operating, and they know that, because I remember speaking to one of the managers of electricity companies. He was managing the light and power in Barbados at the time, and we were on a flight together coming down, and he said, they're making a bid and so on, but it's not because they think it's going to make a difference. It's just because they're trying to be a responsible citizen. And he said, look, at the scale that they're thinking of, it's not going to make a difference in the reduction of electricity. You have got to go much bigger than that. But you see, there's no fundamental, there's a lot of lies beneath everything that they say. Decent work and economic growth is another area.
Let's take a call. Kent, Lambi,
Yep.
go ahead.
Good evening, caller. Thanks for joining us. Go right ahead, please.
Good evening, Lambi. Good evening, Mr. G, and good evening to the rest of the panelists.
Good evening. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Okay.
You know, when I hear the government talking about health in Dominica, I listen to the people who have their families and so have gone into the hospital and came out in a coffin. And I recall when this excuse for a government came into office in 2000, there were 3 fully functioning hospitals, clinics in every district, staff equipped and fully functioning. Now they keep talking about they build a hospital. They're building a hospital. Now, you're building a hospital that you go in there and you can't even get paracetamol. I had a friend after Maria. He went to the hospital. He was sick. He was getting these scratches and things. He was suffering from a very serious heart condition, you know. They had him in the hospital. He had to go down to Roseau and buy medication. I called him and I said, my friend, if it's a mosquito you get out of that place. If it's a mosquito, he eventually got to go, then got back to the States. When he got back to the States, 1 week later, he was on the hospital on an operation table, having a heart replaced, his heart functioning replaced. But he was in a hospital, they had him on a bed. And when he was leaving, they asked him to leave the medication to give to another patient. How can you tell me Dominica had one of the best healthcare service in the region? Persons used to come from different islands to be trained in Dominica. Now, somebody get a hand problem, they die. They have a foot problem, they die. But the thing is that the ministers and their friends and their associates will fly overseas to clean their teeth and for people dying in the hospitals. And this is sad. You know, we talk so much. I think we need to run these people out of office because they will not leave voluntarily. We can sit and think we're going to get electoral reform. We will not get that. Trust me, because Kerry is not going to do anything that will put him out of office. We literally have to run these people out of office. I don't know. People say we mustn't say certain things. But I think it will take a 1979, that will be worse than real 1979, to get the rogues out of office. Thank you, gentlemen. Good night.
Yes.
The caller makes a good point, and that's the thing we have to talk about. What we're talking about, concrete versus capability, and the healthcare. If we look at the information in there, you'll see a lot of information about building new.
Well, let's take a call, Lambi.
Yes. Caller, good evening. Thanks for joining us. Go ahead, please.
Good evening to Mr. G and the panelists. Very good program so far.
Okay.
Mr. G, let me just say, I want to thank you for the work that you're doing. That Tuesday program is really a good program, very informative, and you're getting the right people at the right time to do what they have to do. First of all, you're talking about the budget, and let me congratulate the leader of the opposition for his response to the budget. I think it was a very good response. And again, the leader of the opposition has demonstrated that he wants to see accountability in terms of government's operation. However, I listened to Bernard's opening remark tonight, and he made a lot of sense with respect to government expansion. everybody sees over the years that the budget allocation, or when they aggregate and do a budget, the among the expenditure to raise money comes higher. Right now it's $1 billion budget, but actually the government is taking up too much. It cannot handle, and so far, so that figure needs to be going up. But as you rightly said, and everyone is concurring with that, that is, you have to have results. A budget is supposed to be results oriented. It's not about just coming and read something, but you have to report to make people know, look, you have progressed. And what we see is that most of those undertakings by governments could have been done by the private sector. Most of the work is sometimes private sector driven. And the government will not let the private sector have a say with respect to the development. That's why the government has too much on its plate right now. Which means that the government, as Bernard said, is expanding. The private sector is dwindling, and therefore they cannot make a meaningful contribution towards the development of Dominica. Before, it was being said that the private sector is the engine of growth. Now that is no more, because the government failed to put in necessary incentives to incentivize that sector so that it can grow. What the government is doing instead, it competes with the private sector, and that is very bad for a country. Nowhere in the world do you see that government is the highest employer in a country. Most times the private sector dominates, helps government and move. Another area I heard somebody talk about healthcare, and that is a very serious matter. You're talking about a budget and healthcare. And they boast about building. Mr. G, you live in a big country. Bernard, you have been in the US. Kent, you've been out there, study out there. Let me tell you, most operations that are done in the military, especially during war, is done under a tent. And they do some life-threatening operations, and they save lives. So it's not about a building, it's the equipment and the personnel that you have that well-trained to execute good health care for people and make them survive. And each time people go to the hospital, they pray. I see a lady kneeling down last week. Her son went to the hospital and she's kneeling down in front of the hospital, praying while the son was being processed at the casualty. Praying. That is the kind of sin that is going on there. So I just made the point. It's not about a building. It's having the right equipment and the personnel. And the government cannot tell us exactly when it is that they're going to get the specialization for that. And I'll say finally, that this budget this year has not impacted on the ordinary man. We still see a budget, obviously, as Bernard rightly said correctly, of concrete. And still you have foreigners coming to build that same concrete structure for Dominicans. So people are really not employed or empowered. You have businesses been struggling because why? The government still, the people who come to build and erect those buildings, they still import most of what is needed for the building. And that is really not good for a country. If you want a country to grow, you have to empower the people. And so I want to say that. And finally, the Prime Minister boasting about he come and give us a tax break on the VAT for frivolous charge. Mr. Prime Minister, you have to remember you are the one who instituted VAT. This country has run without VAT, and since you came in, you put in VAT. So if you're giving us a break, that is still good, but don't boast that as if it was in there. You put it. So we need the break. And I think it is coming too late, and you must look at other areas to expand that kind of, cushioning of the impact of the economic situation. Have a good night. Thanks for the opportunity, gentlemen.
Yeah, and thanks a lot for your call. I mean, very sound contribution there. Bernard?
Yes.
You want to take one more call before we go? Let's go then. Let's go, Bernard. Here, Bernard.
The callers raised several good points on the healthcare thing. I think we're all in agreement on that we have a nice building there, a decent building. But the quality of healthcare, which is the important thing, the quality of healthcare being delivered within our healthcare system is very poor. Everyone will tell you that. I mean, it is outrageous that people who are in ICU, their family members have to go buy the drugs to treat an infection. Sometimes infections caused by the hospital itself, hospital-induced infections. And the antibiotics and all the different medication has to be, basically you're saying, go down to Charles Pharmacy or go down to whichever pharmacy and bring back the medications in the intensive care unit for me to take care of you. That is outrageous. Anybody else in any part of the world hearing this thing would say, is this a banana republic? What kind of place is this? Which place asks you to go down to your corner drugstore to buy the drugs necessary to treat you? And when I grew up in the 80s as a young man, healthcare was basically free. Healthcare was provided by the state. We had a tax system, and that was able to subsidize us on a national healthcare system. And healthcare was basically free. And somehow the Dominican public has been duped into believing that we should move into this model, this American high healthcare cost model, where we have to pay for all the things in healthcare. Why are we not growing and expanding the economy so that we have a tax base that can implement a healthcare insurance scheme to cover all Dominicans so that national healthcare of a good quality can be delivered to Dominicans? It is outrageous to have to buy a packet of aspirin in the national hospital, to bring your towels, to bring your sheets, to bring your soap. It is a farce what is going on. The other thing that is going on there is we never see anywhere in this budget and in this healthcare section of the budget any talk about leveraging the capabilities and skills of overseas Dominicans, the diaspora, the technical capabilities that are out there, the people with experience running trauma centers around the world, the people who run healthcare departments, who run training university hospitals around the world, which are Dominicans. That vast expertise and experience which we could bring to bear so strongly on a small population. Nowhere does this budget deal with collaboration with these people. In any of these sectors, there is no collaboration between the expertise we have in our global Dominica to help our regional headquarters, which is our island. And so the government reflects a certain mindset of non-collaboration, of concrete versus capability. And you see that over and over in all aspects of the budget. In the area of, that's in the area of healthcare. In the area of jobs creation, and they're talking about the digital economy, and they want to invest about $1.5 million to create, innovation hubs. That is kind of silly. Why not $100 million? If you're serious about creating a global, if you create a digital economy, you need to put much more money into meaningful centers of excellence and get the best people all over the world. The Dominicans are there, capable of that, and have that collaboration between those people and those global centers so that you can truly train people in what we call the fourth industrial revolution technologies. It will take significant funds to do so. Why build another $100 million white elephant hotel, where you have not bringing in anybody? Take that $100 million and truly try to develop jobs in this digital economy. So again and again, as Kent rightly said, and several callers have pointed out, the infrastructure is there, but the actual capability is hollow. There's nothing behind the mask of the Wizard of Oz. And that is deliberate, I think. There are two reasons for that. One is we are well aware that building structures, concretes and so on, is a very effective way of, let's say, to be generous, disguising the use of funds. Yeah. Any people who study development studies will tell you building things, concrete, is the best way to have kickbacks happen, to have contracts handed out, ways to bleed the economy. So if you look at the budget, what it tells you is there's a lot of bleeding going on because the focus is on building things. Now they want to build 700 new houses, major artery bleeding in operation. And so that is the focus, is the concrete has a definitive reason. The other thing that the caller said in terms of referring to when I was talking about the growth of the government, it's not simply that the government is growing so big and taking too much onto its plate, The government is deliberately growing itself as an organism to consume all aspects of society, because once it does that, it can now control the lives of people. And it's very important to this government to exert control over the Dominican population to ensure that they are under the constant threat of vote us or suffer, or vote us or not benefit. And so the government's growth, as this budget reflects, is actually, if you pull back and you lay it bare, is actually a reflection of this attempt of this government to dominate the Dominican society. And that's why the projects that they execute are done in a very deliberate way, where they control the reins of who gets trained, of who gets the houses, of who gets the capabilities, of who gets the investments to start the small business and so on. is all very structured to ensure that your parliamentary representative will have domination over your life and your well-being, and we will reduce independent spheres of action so that we ensure that this occurs. So this budget represents some very pernicious things. If you truly look at it and understand the underlying intentions, you will start to realize that this government is far from benign, helpful, creative, and innovative, but in fact quite pernicious and quite malicious and ominous in its underlying values.
Yes.
So here's the thing. Let's go back to the question of capacity.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to that.
You see what happens again is that there are good ideas in the budget.
Yeah.
There's always good ideas in every single budget. I mean, you can go way back to how many years. There's always good ideas in it. The thing is, these ideas have to translate into action that is going to create work, that's going to create better wages, that's going to create a better standard of living, a better quality of life, and wealth for the people. This is what a budget, the vision in a budget is supposed to do. In other words, it cannot be just having a budget of a cluster of nice words, and send it just put together for the sake of making things look good. So there are good ideas, but the question is, if the government grows itself too big, which is what is happening, trying to take on a lot more, it's biting more than it can chew, does it have the capacity to be able to deliver on all those promises? Now, if we go back and look at the budgets over the years, has it delivered? Does itself, in terms of the administration of that thing, does it have the capacity to do it? Look, if you start a corporation, as I said earlier, and you're going to want to achieve certain things, you want to get certain results, you employ people who have the capability to deliver those results. That's what you do. Do we see the government employing people who have the capacity to deliver all of those things that it's trying to do? Why is it that we're struggling for many years to have a geothermal plant and we still cannot have it? Why is it that we're trying to have an airport for so many years, we still cannot have it? Why is it that we talk about an abattoir and then find that it's not working the way it's supposed to work? Why is it we first had to say, well, look, agriculture is a has-been industry, and then because we get some political pressure, we change our mind and we say, okay. Why is it that the capacity has not been built in Dexia to be able to do all of the fine things that even this budget is expecting Dexia to do? But has the capacity of Dexia been increased to allow it to be able to achieve those objectives?
Yep.
Will Dexia be able to satisfy the requirements of the farmers? Because what the farmers want is to have something that they can depend on. If you tell me to produce dashing and this and this and that, I know that I can come to you and get it sold every week on a regular basis. I want to know that I can depend on that. And in order for me to do that, I want to know that I will be able to go to my farm and get there on time in a good road and be able to pull out my stuff without my stuff getting, all, messed up along the way because the roads are so poor and so on. Is that kind of capacity being built in so that we can see the farmers? Remember, Kent, we were there before, farmers used to be able to produce stuff and make a very decent living to build their homes. People never used to have to build houses for farmers, They used to build their own homes. So when I talk about capacity, I'm saying there's a lot of good ideas in the budget. We have to look at each other, then whether we look at education and in terms of the front perspective of what Bernard is talking about, the whole new knowledge economy out there. Before I go back to you, Ken, let's take a quick call from Lambie.
Good evening, caller. Go ahead, please, with your call.
Good night, Lambie. Good night to all your listeners.
Good night.
Lambie, there's nothing working under this government. They put set of lights from Roseville to Portsmouth. All those lights are coming down. People taking all those lights down. Nothing is working under this government. Good night, Lambie.
Good night.
Very good night to you. And good night to Grand Bay as well. And I Kent,
yes.
Let me just go over to you.
Yeah. So the caller concluded what we were talking about in the first segment. They have not been able to deliver, and there's no hope that, if we use the past to judge the future, we have no hope that they will. But it's all about capacity, and that's what the budget is lacking. It talks about the good ideas that they picked up from your program, they picked up from Freedom Party, they talks about those good ideas, but there's no capacity to deliver it. If you were to deliver on those good ideas, there are a number of things that need to be in place. Building capacity takes a number of things. First, you would have to start with a proper understanding of the economy, a proper understanding of what needs to be addressed to take us forward. You have to begin to understand that development depends.
Let's take a quick call from Lambi. Sorry to interrupt you, Lambi. Let's take a quick call.
Caller, please go ahead. The caller, are you paying attention? Please make your call.
We lost that caller.
Yeah, he's there. Go ahead, please.
All right.
Okay. So you have to understand that there are fundamental things that are affecting development, not just in Dominica, but other places, and plan the proper strategies to deal with them. So issues like access to finance and costs, nothing new, but even the things that they have doesn't cut it, or the things that they had in the past. No understanding of the fundamental difficulties that entrepreneurs face, or such as venture capital, access to private equity, export guarantee programs, having a whole ecosystem to support business development. No proper understanding of what is required to move business forward.
Let's take another call, Kent.
Yep.
Go ahead, Lambi.
Yes. On the overseas line?
Yes,
go ahead.
Yes, gentlemen, again, good night. I think the mistake we are making, when we talk about economic development, we cannot use this government in the same vein. And then they talk about globalization. I would like somebody to explain to me what kind of product, except intellect, does Dominica have to do in a global market? We have a financial services sector. The government knows nothing about the integration of the financial services sector in our economy. How then can we go anywhere? You have a Lamborghini park in your garage. You don't have petrol to put in it. It's a piece of junk. It is the same thing with Dominica's economy. We keep talking about economic, but the financial services sector, which is the engine of the development, is not addressed at no time at all. No time. Because the financial services sector, I guess, comprises of Roosevelt Skerritt, Anthony Hayden, and the passport sellers. There is an integrated development plan that was developed when the Labour Party came into office. It's on a shelf gathering dust somewhere. They have not one person in their cabinet or in their circles that has the basic idea about economic development. We keep talking about budget. We forget that they passed a budget in July, and by the end of September or thereabout, they're coming back to Parliament for budgetary thing again. So the budget is no real budget. It is a farce that the government puts forward because it has to do so. So there is not a real budget. You coming back for supplemental estimates, sometimes 25% of a budget that you just passed. So that is a farce, and we have to get rid of these things. This government has no real economic development plan. We have no economy at the moment except the passport selling. Our agriculture is gone. There's no manufacturing. Tourism is down. We don't take care of our art or music or culture. We don't address these things with any seriousness. Agriculture has to be the base of our economic development. What are we doing for that? We have no coconut replanting scheme. We have no forest replanting scheme. We have no cocoa, coffee. We have none of these replanting schemes. We don't have agriculturists that go out in the field with the farmer to assist them in developing crops and this sort of stuff. We say we put money at the aid bank to give farmers. Farmers go and take a loan. Do we have an agriculturist specialist in the particular crop to spend time with the farmer in the field, not go out and eat 2 bananas, pick a jelly, or eat 2 mangoes and come back? There is no systematic plan for economic development in Dominica. Okay, build a little house here, talk about the building hospital, and that is not economic development. I'm not praising any budget that next 2-3 months they come in for supplemental. This is nonsense. We need to run these people out of us. Why would you commission people to do an economic development plan, integrated development plan? Never looked at it, dump it aside, because they do not have the capacity or the ability to implement any kind of development plan, none whatsoever. They provide inaccurate information to the IMF, to the World Bank, to the ECCB, even to the CDB. And people accept these things. That contributes to the mediocrity, the incompetence, and the corruption, like the COVID virus that has infected Dominica. All these things are not taken seriously. And when people try to talk about it, they say you're giving Dominica a bad name. And when the former president described them as, shithole countries, we should blame our leadership.
Well, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Our country that way. Good night, gentlemen.
Yes, good night, and thanks a lot for the contribution. Kent, you know what is coming back to all the time? I mean, you see, there's not, these ideas that they are not new. What we're doing now is reflecting on the capacity to be able to, we have had many budgets over the years with some of those ideas and many of those ideas, but we are not getting results that are translating into improved quality of life and the living standards of the people. And so if we look at it from any of the sector standpoints and come back to what Bernard is saying about the new economy, we do not see the kind of allocations in there to improve the human capacity to be able to take advantage of this global economy that we're talking about, this global knowledge economy. And he's saying that there's no point putting $5 million in there for that, and when you should be putting 100 million. And I think the caller is saying, listen, it makes no sense that you'd have estimates that are really not estimates, because you come back a few months later with what they call it, supplementary appropriations bills, asking for 25 to 30 or 50% more than what you had already budgeted for. He said, what kind of budgeting is that? So it comes down again, Ken, to the question of the capacity to do those things.
Right. So if any aspect you look at, that issue will keep coming back. So they don't understand access to finance. They don't have the ministers themselves are not trained, and they often get very cocky. They become a minister and they think that they know everything. But they do not use the skills that exist among Dominicans overseas and in Dominica who have experience, who have that kind of capacity. They are not inclusive. Why do they not do it? Because fundamentally, if they were to hire you and you're above board, that won't benefit them. So they're looking for people who will come and who would work with them corruptly. But once you begin to do that, you are deviating from truly pursuing, so nobody wants to work with a corrupt government. The good people don't want to work with a corrupt government. They themselves don't want to hire the right people because they want to continue to be corrupt. So, and they themselves don't have the capacity. And many of our people who get trained, they don't want to stay in Dominica. They don't want to work in Dominica. They don't want to work for the government. So a lot of our good people keep staying out. You bring all of that together and there you go. No capacity. Right? So that is the problem. So they don't understand. So when they do put a few things in the budget, that's why Bernard is saying it's not coherent, because they don't quite understand how one thing should work. What is the real challenge? What is the real issue? What will work? What will not work? They simply don't understand it, and they're just grasping at straws. So I say something, they pick it up. You say something, they pick it up. Bernard says something, but they don't fully understand it. I could bet you, for instance, earlier on I mentioned in terms of access to finance, I mentioned venture capital, and I mentioned credit guarantees. Maybe next budget you'll see these two things mentioned.
Yeah, because Kent, there's this thing called export credit insurance guarantee facilities.
Right.
You see, once you start really looking at exports, you have to bring in those kind of things. It's
You have to bring in those kind of things.
The question of national health insurance.
Right.
If you really want the system to work, you have to, because people's health is their wealth. They can't expect your productivity if people are not well.
Good. So we raise those ideas, they'll pick it up, but they will not bring in the skilled people who understand it, the Dominicans who understand it well. They will not seek assistance because they want to seek assistance from people who are like themselves corrupt. And people who are like themselves corrupt will not bring the right kinds of assistance to the table. So we are stuck. Another area is, weak institutions. That is one of the fundamental reasons why our countries do not go forward. Now, and that's the last caller said that there's no proper planning framework. There's no proper planning capacity in place. It all boils down to capacity. So they don't understand exactly what to do, even when they have a good idea. They don't understand. So they will send a little thing in the budget, but it doesn't develop to the way it ought to. They do not study it properly to start with. So they throw the idea in there. So, for instance, I see some ideas in there on agriculture. And these are some things we have mentioned from time to time about how do you, in terms of promoting exports, how do you begin to assist the hucksters, and how do you, set up, in the focus on the market. It's generally a good idea, but I guarantee you they have not studied it properly. I guarantee you that they haven't really figured out how this thing will really work. And I guarantee you one more thing. In doing it, they're going to try to get the benefit for themselves. They're going to try to put their people in there. They're not going to be a proper system in place to determine how do we going to get the private sector to do this. Or they're not going to say, okay, we will partner with the private sector, bring in some funds, but do it in a proper way. They're just going to come in there and try to grab the business for themselves. And in doing so, it's going to fail. It's not going to work. But that is what happens all the time. Lack of capacity, corruption, lack of proper institutions, government inefficiency, all of these things prevent us from planning well and from executing well. Right? They don't understand the full importance of innovation and productivity and exports in driving growth. I mean, they know those things on the surface, but they don't truly understand what it takes to improve innovation. And Bernard always talks about that. But the kinds of R&D systems, the kinds of what you need to do in your information and communication technology sector, what you need to do in developing your human resources, or how your education should be adjusted, systems should be adjusted. Of course, they'll send a few people to go study and they'll report on that. But they will not know exactly, how to really manage the education system to get the kind of skill sets that can support your knowledge economy, that can support your economy in growing and can serve as an attraction to investors. They don't understand that. So all they know is to send a few people to school, give a few scholarships, and they do so corruptly as a bribe. And not with a strategic, proper mindset.
Let's just build on that, Bernard. Let's just build on what Candy said, because look, we can take any component, any aspect of the budget. As I said, there are always good ideas in every single budget. The question is how you translate those ideas into action and results that are going to improve people's lives. So far, we're still, in terms of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, as Ken was talking about, the whole question of poverty and hunger and all those things still exist. So in other words, we are not really achieving those objectives yet.
We have not.
Because, and then we're not reporting on the progress that we're making, and we don't see the progress reports in the budget to say, okay, here's the progress we've made on hunger and poverty, mendicancy and so on, and health, and therefore this is the next stage that we're going to. Here's the thing, Bernard. If you do the same thing the same way every time, you're going to get the same results. What we're saying is that over the years, we have not changed our strategy in what we're going to do to accomplish those same things we put in the budget, and therefore we're getting the same results, which means that the work is not there. People are leaving the country by droves. They're going away to look for work. They're still happening. The wages are not there. We can see it reflected in what is being offered to the public servants, the public officers. It is not there. The country does not seem to have the capacity to increase those wages. The wealth is not generated. You can see that people still have to wait to get a free house. Whereas I said before, the farmers will be able to build their own homes. People used to get into self-help skills and help build their own homes, but today people don't have people can't even pay their light bills properly. Sunday they have to have somebody to help them with the light bill, with the telephone bill and the top ups and so on. So I'm just saying this, Bernard, to say this. It is very important what we're talking about, to build the capacity. If you have a vision and a plan for an economy and for a people, for the growth of people and the growth of your economy, right? Business sector and all the various components of the business sector which create your economy. You must know this is the kind of human capacity we need to, in order to build those sectors to get those results. And your education system is supposed to reflect that. So when you give scholarships and you create, these are the people you want to train. You don't want to go and train 50 lawyers and you can only use 2. Don't make sense. If you really want to go into the knowledge economy, you cannot just say, okay, let's just train a few people to do a little thing here and there. You have to make a plan like you would, Bernard, and you'll tell us about it. Make a plan, see where you fit into the whole global system, what you can take advantage of, where you can fit, what can you generate in terms of your own wealth as part of that thing there. And then you say, okay, this is the human capacity we need. These are the various areas of expertise that we're going to need in order to be able to build that plan and implement it and get the results. And we're going to ensure that those persons, that's what happens in the Silicon Valley. Is you have all these people and they generate a lot of wealth. They're wealthy because they're the brain, of the whole thing, the heartbeat of the thing. But let's talk a little bit more about the whole question of ideas in there, but the capacity and the intent to develop the capacity to get the results.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely right. As we've been saying all evening, that is the real crux of the matter. So there are several things to dive into here. And I'll build on what Kent was saying. And as Kent indicated, they do not understand at a very deep level those things, right? They say the words, they say the consultant like words, they may read a few consultant reports, they may look at a few plans, integrated plans put together by some other people, take the words and put together a decent sounding document, but without the real understanding and the capacity, as we said, to execute that. So that's one. The other thing is, in addition to not understanding or having the real deep expertise to translate into action, is their motivations are not there, right? They have the incentive structure for them to do the hard work to develop a country is simply not there, because the incentive structure is really to exploit as much as possible the economic citizenship program. To sell passports is easy. It's not hard work. It's easy to sell passports and take your cut. That's it. Sell passports, take your cut, take a few of the monies, stay a few things in the budget, do a few little things to win elections. That's it. Easy. So it's a basic amount of laziness and a basic amount of just not having the right incentive structure. They are not growing the economy because they do not see fundamentally how they profit from that. How do I get my cut from Bernard's welfare? How do I get my cut from Kent's and Mr. G's and so forth? They see they say the right things, they have to in order to stay elected, but fundamentally, I'm convinced they do not see the benefit really to put the hard work to develop the country. Why should I when I can go sell a few passports and become a billionaire? And so the incentive structures are not aligned for this government because they're not really into it for the joy, for the passion, for the belief of developing a country, like people who are dedicated statesmen and women to their country, who would come into this, who get joy and quality of life from developing their country, who get joy from seeing people's wages increase and their mothers have a better life, and their sisters and their friends who they went to high school with have a quality of life they can be proud of. If that is what the psychic payments is what you seek, then you will be truly invested in doing what it takes to educate yourself, to understand the problem and to tackle the problem of development. But the problem of development is not the central focus of this government. The problem of development is simply a veneer they need to apply so people say something is happening and somebody's getting some handouts and some payments. But the fundamental deep understanding of developing the social process, the political process, the economic process, developing those institutions, as Ken mentioned, to actually put in the capacity to deliver is not there. And this is not just we just saying these things are not happening. And the proof is there, right there. Budget after budget, nothing is fundamentally changing. The economic engine is not growing. In fact, it's dwindling. So these are objective facts. These are objective facts. We have to, every Dominican has to ask themselves, I read this budget, some interesting things there, but what is happening next year? Where is the proof of these things being translated into reality, except a few buildings, a few concrete structures, a few roads paved, a few houses built, a few handouts given? But again, I was reading, some recent reports. The number of deaths have gone up dramatically in Dominican, the death rate, and the birth rate hasn't increased much because of so much migration, and so now we're stagnant. In fact, we're at the point of our decline, which has been happening, even accelerating in our population. And so everywhere you turn and look for real results, these results are simply not delivered. The other thing is in order to grow an economy, especially a knowledge economy, you need a meritocracy. You need to get the best people, no matter what political stripe, no matter what persuasion, no matter what peculiar personality they may have. What you need is the best brains. And what you need is managers who can integrate those best brains to work together to deliver results. But that is exactly the opposite of what we see. We do not see anything like recruiting the best brains. You only recruit the best liberites, and sometimes not even the best liberites. The qualification is to be a Labour Party supporter. And so you do not create a meritocracy, which is necessary to create a knowledge economy. And so that's why when we talk about our ideas and put them out there and we explain what is to be done, I'm not particularly concerned that this government is going to be able to steal those in any meaningful way, because they may steal the thought, the idea, the concept on paper, but they are simply incapable due to their political blinders on integrating people of all political parties into a coherent workforce that can develop this country. They are simply unable to break out of the self-imposed partisan approach to actually delivering results. And so they are not capable. If you look over and over again, the abattoir has failed, the feed project has failed, the coffee plant thing has failed, the geothermal has failed and not being realized over and over and over again, because the dysfunctions inherent in this government simply leads to those outcomes. They do not recruit the best brains for political reasons. They exclude people from overseas because they are threatened by true expertise and people who are transparent in their operations. And they do not put the depth of understanding they need to get us rolling.
Let's take a quick call, Bernard. Lambi, let's take a call.
Good evening, caller. Thanks for joining us. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good evening. How are you doing?
We're fine. Go ahead, please.
Good program, man. My point is, I heard in the address of in the budget address that the government said that they are putting money into marketing, going out there to find market. I think it's about $1 million something. But the question I want to ask, and I would like everybody to know, when you go out there and look for the market, how are you going to transport these?
Right. Right.
Because I think the first thing that you should do as if you are doing a market research, you should check your transportation. How am I going to bring the produce over to the various markets? So I find this is working real out.
Yeah.
No understanding of what marketing is all about.
Yes. Sorry, Sheridan, the caller, I thank the caller for raising that point. Because first of all, we have to say marketing is key. And I've always asked the question, they had the World Bank program, giving tools, giving this and giving that. And my question was, but how can you give all those things? And any farmer would take it, but pay no attention to marketing. But when you talk about marketing, it must go hand in hand with transportation. So the caller is right about this, but they have promised transportation over and over and over again. So they seem this year to have listened and to have heard that you cannot just, and I don't understand how an institution like the World Bank could get involved in a project like that and not pay sufficient attention to marketing. But this year, the government seemed to have heard all the complaints that we had, all the questions that I have raised and other people have raised, and they have said, okay, let's begin to address marketing. And the caller rightly said, without addressing the shipping element, okay? But even in the things that I see there, I am almost sure that they have not done a proper analysis. And secondly, I am almost sure, for instance, I think I mentioned it early on, they mentioned about setting up depots in the markets like Antigua and so on. I am almost sure they have not done a proper analysis, number one. And number two, if they do set up the depots, you know what they're going to try to do? They'll get, just like they do with the shipping and all the contracts here, they'll get one of their people to try to run the depot in Antigua. So this is the problem. So they have the right idea. We need to do marketing. We need to work with the hucksters. We need to have more formal organization. We need to be more strategic. We need to be more efficient and innovative even in our marketing. But they do not have the capacity to come up with the right strategies. And even if they can come up with the right strategies, the corruption element is going to prevent it from working well. That is the challenge we're having. And the shipping, that is definite point that the caller has raised. So thanks, caller, for raising that. Yeah. But one of my other concerns, I see a big challenge in the budget, and the government, they have no ability to address it, I guess. Dominica, we are heading down a precipice, and they are trying to put it forward as if it's a good thing. But you realize that more than half of the budget comes from CBI. More than half of the budget. Not only more than half of the budget comes from CBI. Even if you were to take out CBI, the current budget and last year, the government would not be able to pay its recurrent expenditure. By recurrent expenditure, we are referring to things that's always recur, like wages, like buying medicines at the hospital, doing those kinds of things other than hard investments like roads. So the hard investments like the roads, you call that capital expenditure. Things like wages and salaries and pensions, you call that recurrent expenditure. Not even that they would have been able to cover if it wasn't for the CBI. Now, if you think of that, people, first of all, the CBI should have been used in a more strategic way. Okay? You could have used it to do the kinds of things to set the economy on a solid foundation. The same things some of us we're talking about tonight. You could have used it to build the international airport. You could have already had an airport already. You could have used it to make a serious dent into shipping, what they call a just call about. You could have used it to seriously restructure the agriculture sector in a fundamental way and put us on a solid path to developing a knowledge-based economy. You could have done all those things, but you didn't. Instead, the monies were misappropriated. And you come to a point where your debt is as high as 96% for central government, as high as 105% for the entire country of GDP, 105% of GDP. We owe more than we produce in a year, in other words. You have not applied the CBI to this, but you're using the CBI to play games. You use the CBI in ways for electioneering as bribes. Nobody would say, I wouldn't say a house isn't good. But clearly, if you see the way they use the CBI for social programs, it's not about growth and development, it's about retaining, coming back to office, bribing people. But in all of that, they have created a real dangerous situation. By now, everybody knows that the CBI program will be lost sooner or later. When that happens, and it will happen in the next 2 or 3 years if we listen to Ralph Gonzalez, what he had said to us, that the governments of the Eastern Caribbean were given the ultimatum. You either fix, you fix your CBI programs or lose it, or you lose, you stop your CBI programs, or you lose the visa-free travel that we allow you into the EU. in any case, any one of those means the CBI program is dead. You might have a small leeway of a year or two. It may be still doing good in the sense that people are maybe rushing in for the last bit that they can get, but clearly it's going to end. It's going to end, and you're at a point where your money, the money you're getting in, certainly is what caused you to be able to pay some of your salaries. And there is nothing in the budget to say, but we expect this to happen in a year or two. So we are going to reposition so that we can continue to pay our civil servants. You can continue to buy. Already you have done all the damage before, because in the past you should have been using the CBI differently, okay, for capital and reducing budget, so that when that day come, you wouldn't be so in such a bad situation. But you didn't do that. And yet in the budget, you still have nothing to recognize that day is going to come. Nothing, absolutely no recognition. As a matter of fact, what they say is the opposite. What they say instead is that, you know something, guys, we are glad we don't even have to charge you a single cent because we have the CBI. The same CBI we know that we will ultimately use. The same CBI that they are not using to pay down the very high debt. But they're boasting. So there is such a bad day coming for Dominica. This day is coming and the budget has no recognition. So what is going to happen is going to crash. The economy is going to crash because they're making no provisions for that day. We would have to go to the IMF. And when I said to you, Dominica is going to get like a Haiti, this is real. Our best chance, and they have so messed it up. I'll be honest with you, it doesn't even mean that a new government will be able to immediately fix it. But what will happen, though, is that a new government will have more confidence. Because let me tell you, when I tell you this government, there's no trust in this government out there, right? For instance, I've always said that when they boasted, for instance, after the hurricane, that they were going to get all of these contributions from governments overseas. If people recall, I said there's no way you're going to get that because you're too corrupt. People know that you're corrupt and they're not going to give you. I said at the time, people were in the corridors of the UN and they were on the UN floor saying what they would give to Dominica. But in the corridors, they were saying, there's no way I'm going to give this money to these guys. They're too corrupt. So a new government would have the benefit of having other countries say, okay, finally we have a government that is responsible. We are willing to lend them and give them. So we got nothing, almost nothing. The people we got monies from after the hurricane were the people who were bound to give to us, like the World Bank, the World Bank has an obligation to lend to us. IMF has an obligation to lend to us. To some extent, CDP2 has an obligation to lend. But all the countries' bilateral lending, ask them to produce the results on the bilateral aid that we receive compared to what they were boasting they would get. So clearly, even a new government is going to find difficulty because these guys are so messed it up. They have so misused the CBI. They have brought us to a terrible position and they have no measures to fix it in the budget. But even so, a new government will have more confidence. I know of investors. I have said that before to people. They're real investors. You know the investors we are attracting? Those like the Montreal who want to misuse our money. Okay? Our own money they're using, by the way, not even their own money. But the real investors, when I have reached out there to some people, I have gotten the news that, look, there is no way we're going to invest in Dominica under this kind of government. That's what you're getting. So although they're so messing it up that even for new government is going to be difficult, the best hope is still to fix governance so that those investors out there to say, boy, I know you guys have a great country. I know you guys have a rich island of the world. I know you have something we can build. And now that we have better governance, we are willing to come and take a chance. Other countries will begin to say, I know this last government messed it up for you. And they messed it up real bad. But I know your country has potential. And now that you have better governance, we are willing to come in and help you. But we're going to need endless help. And under this government, nobody is going to be willing to help. Because we have seen that after the hurricane. They were not helping. They did not help. It's only the World Bank and the IMF because they were obligated. We are facing a storm, and this government is doing nothing about it. Yet all they're trying to do is make people think that people are talking against the CBI and we'll bring it up. We cannot bring down the CBI. The EU people too smart.
Like, Kent, let's take a call.
Okay.
Lambi.
Good evening, caller. Please go ahead.
Good evening to you, Lambi. Good evening to your panel, and good evening to your listeners. Mr. Vital, I am listening to you, and I can't agree with you more. And likewise, I have heard the government of the day talk about the budget for Dominica, and it's frankly sad that we have to go every year listening to the pity and the misery of our parliament. We have the recycled information, the lies, and frankly, our prime minister who spends his time in parliament, which is the sad part, an honorable house in parliament lying to the public, just like he did a few years ago, talking about putting $5,000 for an international airport outside. But here's the problem. The government of Dominica cannot get away from CBI revenue. Why? Because they have not increased the tax base. And seeing that the government is the highest employer in the land, then obviously most of the tax revenue would come from salaries, from working people. And the way you increase a tax base and not dependent on just the little labor you have there, is by having a strong manufacturing, strong production, strong agriculture, strong tourism, and most of all, strong productivity within the economy.
Yep.
So unless we've gotten to that point, then the government has no choice, because as you said, you look at our expenditures, you look at our revenue, and the revenue for taxes is pitiful. So therefore, for the government to meet its obligation, it has to continue selling passports to anybody who's willing to pay for it. And it's almost like a drug. It's an addiction. And it's easy money. And all Tom, Dick, and Harry can, as long as you have money, who cares where you're making that money from? Who cares where you're getting that money from? Have to sell passports. And even in the sale of passports, the scheme is lying to these people, because you're telling me if Dominica was so productive, the teachers, the policemen, the nurses should be able to invest in that productivity in the economy, but they can't. So you tell a guy, I'm selling you a passport, and the way you make money is by selling your investment for somebody else, and they get. I mean, it's almost like a Ponzi scheme. So I think the government of Dominica has been lying to the investors and the population so much that they can't even do what is right to correct it, because they are in too deep. And as a result, we, the people of Dominica, are going to suffer. But anyway, I'm listening, gentlemen. I can't add more, as you said, Kent, because you spot on, and I think we have to come to the realization that our country is almost lost.
I mean, we have gone.
I know I want to go to you, Bernard. I want to go to you, but I want to just do this, because we only have a few more minutes left, right? Now, I want us to focus on solutions for the last few minutes that we have. You see, we understand the problem. We're saying the ideas, some of the ideas are okay, but we've seen those ideas regurgitated in budget after budget after budget. But what we see is that, Lambi, you want to take a quick call? Let's take a quick call, Lambi.
Yes, the caller on the overseas line, please go ahead.
Good evening, guys. Good program.
Good evening.
Guys, you know what I cannot understand? Our debt is 1,400,000 or 500,000 more. Dominica population is 70-something thousand less. About 50,000 less people working in Dominica. A 3/4 of that getting low salary. How we going to service our debt when we have a government that not employing people across the board, only trying to employ people that supporting them, and 60% of their supporters depending on them for handouts. Yet still we're going to approach building an international airport, and he's trying to tell us we will not be paying 1 cent. I believe Skerrit lied to the nation. In the beginning, Skerrit, no, it was the Chinese that was going to build the airport. That's why he did not sign in the stadium. Skerrit is lying to us, and because he lied, it costing Dominica millions and millions of dollars, and the people start to go down in poverty, and there is no end to it. Dominicans have to realize Skerrit is not telling the truth, and because he's not telling the truth, we are losing a lot. He messed up the people in Wesley. He brew them. He buy them up for the Chinese. He knew where the United Workers' Party buy for the airport with a government of unity. He could have gone there and continued the project. He refused because he tried to get the people out. Today we're in the hands of the Chinese. So guys, we have serious problem. The trust to the Dominican Labour Party, zero, and that costing the country extreme poverty. God bless Dominica. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that. Lambi, did you want to take a call or should I go to Bernard? Bernard, I wanted to go to you because, let's leave here with some solutions. We've seen some of the problems. We said some of the ideas have been, year to year we're getting those ideas. But what has been clear is that we have not had the capacity to implement those ideas. And that is why many of them are still on the books. Lambi, you want to take a call?
Yes, caller, please go ahead.
Yes, good night to everybody. Are you hearing me loud and clear?
Loud and clear, sir.
All right. When I joined the NDC in 1997, under the capable management of Mr. Sheridan Gregoire, we were focusing on the generation of an economic development plan in collaboration with the Economic Development Ministry, using the modern airport project as a major central driving force. The Pierre Charles administration developed an integrated development plan, which has been watered down into a growth and social protection strategy. We urgently need to develop an integrated development plan, which would envision Dominica in 5 years, 10 years, and conceptually in 20 years' time. What are our natural endowments? And how do we build core competencies to optimize our return on our natural endowment? Thus, the budgetary process should be used and employed as a critical tool to operationalize our integrated development plan. For the last 2 decades, we have been using the budget as a one-year plan, but grossly underperforming. We must develop an integrated development plan. We seemingly don't have the internal capacity, but we need to engage local, regional, and international resources to develop this integrated development plan. The best of us need to take care of the rest of us, or the future will be very bleak. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I think I recognize that voice. I'm not going to call it. Lam, you want to take a call?
Yes, caller on the international line. Go ahead, please.
Hey, good evening, gentlemen. Good evening, Mr. G. How you doing, bro?
Well, probably not half as good as you, but still working on it.
You expect me to believe that? Good evening to Ken and to Bernard. Very interesting program. I just wanted to make a brief comment in light of the observation Kent made with regards to the economic citizenship program. And I think that is so on point. I'm not sure if Kent or Bernard or yourself might have a chance yet to look at the 2 recent Audit General report that was just published. It was the report for 2020, financial year ending June 30th, 2020 and 2021. And I noticed there with respect to the 2020 auditor's report, economic citizenship program represented 32% of the recurrent revenue, 32%.
Yeah.
Taxes on domestic goods and consumption represented 34%. The following year, 2021, economic citizenship program, the tax revenue represented 55% of recurrent revenue, 55%. And taxes on domestic goods and consumption, 21%. So right away you see, therefore, that in terms of the economy itself wasn't performing, because they, as a matter of fact, collected as much as 11% less tax locally. Private sector engagement certainly wasn't there. As far as the economic citizenship concerned, in 2021, the total amount that was collected by way of revenue amounted to well over 447 million 968,114. The year 2020, the amount collected by way of the economic citizenship was 182,355,035. So well over 182 million in 2020 and well over 400 million in 2021. Clearly, that's not sustainable. If you look at the current budget that was just presented, if you count the number of times that job creation might have been mentioned in that budget, I don't think it was mentioned more than 3 or 4 times. And clearly, there wasn't any indication anywhere in the budget that seemed to suggest that government had some engagement or discussion with private sector as the engine of growth to facilitate that environment for them. So I agree with Ken, we're into some serious trouble moving forward because clearly the program, as we know, not just for Dominica, but worldwide, several other countries that have the economic citizenship program is going to face some difficulties. And if we can allow or is allowing as much as 55% of our current revenue to come from the CBI program, clearly when that goes away, we're going to be in a lot of problems. And I'm sure it's not going to be much different when we look at the Auditor's General report for 2022, and maybe 2023. So I just wanted to raise that. Also, I know you're coming to an end of the program, but in terms of even the report again speaks of, I think one of your callers called earlier and spoke about the report. I mean, in terms of contingency fund that was presented for the year 2020 and 2021, again, clearly indicate that the budgets that were presented were so inadequate that they had to go back to Parliament and pass what is called a contingency fund in the amount of well over $275 million for 2020. So we're in a lot of trouble. I know you asked for solutions, but the question remains, who's going to implement the solutions? That's a $1 million question.
Yeah.
Who's going to really implement the solutions?
No,
Anyhow, good program, gentlemen. I'm listening.
Yes, I think we're getting some excellent contributions from our callers here tonight. Excellent contributions. And when we talk solutions, we can see the solutions already presenting themselves. It's just that those who have the vision to see them must see them and make a determination to do them regardless of whether or not it's of personal interest to them. Because it is when Edward Oliver Libler left office, he said he had $161 something like in his bank account. Edward Oliver Libler was not concerned about amassing wealth for himself. He was concerned about making sure the farmers are okay. And then the farmers were able to buy their own transport and build their own homes and so on. That's what you do. Now, one of the callers mentioned about the whole question of integrated development planning. This is what we've been talking about all night. You see, this is what we're talking about. You cannot just have an idea and it's in an isolated way you're going to implement it. It's not going to work. In other words, you have to have a vision of where you want to take the country. What is the mainstay of this thing? Is it about people? Are you going to look at Singapore, for example, where that the basis of the thing was the development of their human resources? Because we have a lot of human resource in Dominica and outside of Dominica that we're not using. It's in every sector we can see it. Now, if we were to really make use of that, forget about political colors and so on. Bring everybody together, make use of the real capacity that we have to look at that integrated development planning approach. And then say, okay, Bernard Hurtault is talking about the knowledge economy. We can see where so many people can develop a lot of wealth from that. Let us incorporate that into our thing so that the budget is not a budget for this year. A budget is something that contributes to an overall more long-term development plan with a program of activities and an implementation plan which is going to be implemented by human beings that have the capacity to implement those programs. Otherwise, you're not going to succeed. If you're in the private sector and you're competing, if you don't have the people who can take the right decision and get the job done, you don't get the productivity, you don't get the results. That's the point we're making. So in terms of solution, if we're to take one thing at a time and say, okay, but something, you heard the last caller talk about what it is with the CBI funds, right? Now, for years, we've been amassing all this amount of CBI funds. So what do we have to show? So some roads were repaired, 1 or 2 hotels were completed. Some are completed, never got started. We go all the way back to the Lai River. That's still there, never completed. We have a couple of hotels in the north that are not yet completed. I'm not sure how much work is going on them. Remember, we have a Morocco hotel that are still there. We have the Anarchy. I'm not so sure what is that. I understand the work has stopped there. We heard about a talk of a hotel, the public works, nothing happening there. The fact of the matter is all the resources seem to have been going into the hotel sector. And what is the impact on the economy? Right? Some people are getting very fabulously wealthy, but what is the overall impact on the economy? Whereas before, if we were to look at the knowledge economy, if we look at agriculture and agribusiness and manufacturing, if we were to take a substantial amount of the proceeds of the CBI and make sure that we establish the firm foundations for those major pillars of our economy, like agriculture, like manufacturing, like agribusiness, and so on, and the technology sector, the knowledge sector. It means that when that CBI fund runs out, which it will, we'll have already established major pillars of our economy which can earn foreign earnings for us, where people can get wealthy and have good paying jobs, and so on. This is what I'm talking about, Bernard. So maybe let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, as you said, a lot of the solutions we have addressed some of the issues, and we have pointed out the underlying reasons why this economy is not performing, the government is not performing, our country is not progressing. By pointing out those reasons, I think the solutions become self-evident. We can talk about a few of those in detail. First thing, obviously, is that we need to have a different government in place. Clearly, this government has proven itself completely incapable or disinterested in developing this country. As we said earlier, they are not invested. Their incentive structure is not about truly developing a country. The incentive structure is to become as wealthy as possible by somehow manipulating the CBI funds. Therefore, you cannot have a management team who is actually not truly interested in the business that they're in, but in fact engaged in some other nefarious activities to earn income and do the business of the company on the side, because that's what they do. Right now, this government is doing the business of the country on the side, but the major focus on intellectual energy goes into mechanisms, schemes, possibilities to exploit CBI for the enrichment of a few. So the first solution is we need a government of people who are dedicated to the idea of developing this country because they love the people of this country, because they want us to have a place in the global landscape where people of African descent are doing it right, are becoming wealthy, are doing the right things. We need a government that believes in the people of Dominica. This government does not truly believe in the people of Dominica. If you look at everything that this government does, it brings in foreigners, it brings in others, it brings in other expertise. They may say the right things about, I believe in Dominica, I want to develop Dominicans. But if you really look at it, this government fundamentally doesn't believe in Dominicans. It does not believe that the real wealth of the country is the Dominican people and the Dominican mind. It is not truly invested hundreds of millions of dollars into developing the Dominican minds, because it's only human beings with the imagination and the creativity that can create value. And this is what this is all about. Creating an economy that works, creating an economy that grows is about, can I create value? But this government is not interested and has not created value. They simply are generating what we call rent wealth, right? Rent is simply something that's pre-existing, like our passports and our citizenship. It's pre-existing. You put in no effort, no creativity, no imagination to create anything. You simply take an existing asset, like oil, and you sell it. But that creates the wealth, the natural resource curse, which is well known in the development paradigm. When you have the resource that you simply do not employ people's imagination, creativity, and innovation to create value, you use that to oppress the people. You use that to get some level of development that keeps the people satisfied, but is not engaging fully the imagination, the creativity, the knowledge of the people to create an economy. So Dominica's solution has to be, how do I create value? We need to ask that to ourselves. Right now, we're not creating value. Very few of us in Dominica in the environment is not enabled to allow us to use our imagination, innovation, and knowledge to create value. So we've got to get to the point of creating value. As I've said many times in many different programs, we are in an age of amazing possibilities. The fourth industrial revolution, where human life is going to be transformed by data analytics, cloud computing, cybersecurity concerns, data twinning, and all those things. We lost the ability in 2000 to jump on the information technology train, which we should have with a competent government who understood these things. But now we have a second shot. In the year 2022, we are moving beyond IT into the knowledge economy, into the cyber economy, into datafication of the world, data twinning. We can do this thing. We have smart people. We have a small economy, a small number of people to create good jobs for. The government needs to focus and put in its energies into understanding that pivotal point that is here in human history, and to ensure that Dominica plays a role and jumps on the bandwagon to exploit that. It can be done fairly easily. Within 5-6 years, we can train a workforce who was able to start earning significant sums of money in these areas that are starved for resources, starved for technical expertise around the world.
You know, but Bernard, as you say that, right? When you look into the budget, you might see some small amount allocated for some of that. Some small amount,
some pitifully small amount. $1.5 million is nothing. $1.5 million could not equip a decent electronics lab. $1.5 million could not buy 2 or 3 data analyzers, which are very basic equipment in an electronics lab. It tells us that there is no focus to create a vision, a visionary future for ourselves, a transformational economy. The point of this budget and the solutions we're looking for are not to be found in this budget. We need transformational solutions. We need people who understand these transformational solutions, how to do agriculture that is smart, at the high-end agriculture, because we simply don't have the terrain for mass agriculture. We need people who will understand how to use knowledge and to leverage knowledge to create the value that we seek to transform this country. This budget doesn't do it. The transformations that we need, the solutions that we need, are not to be found in this government.
You know, one of the things that we're finding is this, that I'm hearing that 2 or 3, partners who were involved in one of the projects in a hotel project in Dominica, they got something like $100 and something million of fees, commissions. Now, wouldn't it? No. Where is this? How does that?
That would be transformational for our
precise. You see what I'm talking about? So if you have the vision and you say, really, but I'm going to use the CBI funds to really establish a solid foundation in some of those sectors, like the knowledge economy, like a manufacturing based on agribusiness based on, and so on, you could take that 150 million or so and really establish your people, develop the human capacity, because we have a lot of people, a lot of brains, and they could take this and really develop a major global industry where Dominica could get a lot of income from. A lot of people could get wealthy of this. A lot of Dominicans get very well out of this 100. But what you find is that in the program, 3 people or 2 people got away with $100 and something million, and we don't see any impact on our economy here.
We need visionary, transformational leaders. We need people who believe we can do this. This government doesn't believe we can do this. This government believes the only thing we can do is sell passports that say "ça donne pas faire, nous sort." This government doesn't believe that we truly have the capacity to transform ourselves into a prosperous society. It doesn't believe that. It shows no faith in that. It shows no faith in that whatsoever. And so that's the sort of things we need. We need transformational vision. We need investment into that transformational vision. And we can do this thing. I am confident we can do this thing, but not with the people in government right now. They cannot do it. They don't have the vision for it, and they're not incentivized to do it.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm confident about, Kent. I'm confident about the fact that I know that we have a wealth of Dominicans with a lot of knowledge, with a lot of capability, and there's many of them are in Dominica, but a lot of them are outside of Dominica. And those people, wherever they are, many of them are really already showing us, if we go and check, we'll see that they already have developed a lot of experience and knowledge and expertise, which is exactly some of what we're looking for to build the country. Bernard is talking about this. Look, you have an expert right there. And Bernard can probably find 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 names of persons who have that kind of capacity. If you bring them together, they create a Silicon Valley and they can rule the world from right there in that little island. The point is that we have to think big, think global. One of the callers mentioned the question of integrated development planning. That is key. You cannot plan on a year-to-year basis. Your budget in any one year should contribute to your overall long-term development plan. And you have to see the sectors that have the capability of being resilient and sustainable. So we talk about resilience and sustainability as though they're just words. These are not just words, these are real things. I mean, if you want to have sustainability, you have to look at your human beings. I mean, if your people are not sustainable, they have to develop their capacity to do just that. And you have to look at your various sectors. You're not going to be able to have a sustainable agriculture sector unless you come out and design one and make sure you have the discipline to ensure that you put what is required in there so it can be sustainable. No point saying, we are in a hurricane belt and we're going to have hurricanes, it's going to do this. And you don't do anything to mitigate and you don't do anything to ensure that when the hurricane goes, you very quickly you're back up on your feet again and you can feed the world. The point I'm making is this, Ken, that I don't think much planning is going into what we're doing. And I think Bernard is right. And maybe the reason we're not doing that kind of planning, we're not looking at those major pillars of our economy, those major sectors which are sustainable, is because we have a narrow interest.
Yep. Yes. So all of these things are right. And I have to agree. The most urgent thing that we need to do is change this government. So everyone, hear me, please. The most important thing we can do right now to fix our situation is change this government, because this government cannot fix it. And if they can, then I will invite them to work with everybody else. And there are many people who can help them fix it. But they would have to, for them to fix it, they'll have to want to come clean. They would have to want to use the CBI properly. They would have to want to bring in the right people who are not corrupt, to do the proper planning and so on. So that's the most fundamental thing, Dominicans, everyone who's listening to me. This government, we are in trouble. We are getting there. The reality is already upon us. So the best thing we can do now is as urgently and as quickly as we can change this government, because we give ourselves a better running chance for a new government to come in and help to fix it. Having said that, it's already very late. We're already in a quagmire. We're already approaching a situation, as I said earlier on, that if we were to lose the CBI, we're in plenty trouble. So what do we do about it? How can we do about the current situation? Even for a new government, what do we need to do? If we were to change this government, even so, what has to be done? The most urgent thing would be, for as long as we still have the CBI, use it properly. For as long as we still have the CBI, ensure that not a single cent of the CBI is stolen, is misappropriated, goes to one of their friends. That's the first thing a new government must commit to. Now, if by any chance this government wants to make a difference, they will commit to that right now. They will stop this misallocation of resources. They will stop this illegality of not putting the monies where it should be in the consolidated fund and holding it out there illegally. If they want to make a difference, they can do it now. But I'm not convinced they want to make a difference. They want to defend themselves. They want to use the monies to bribe the people to win elections. So that's what I'm saying, people, let's open our eyes. We're not going to go anywhere. Labor rights, you have to understand, the country is not going to go any further with this party, because their only interest is to exploit you, the labor rights, and they buy you with a house, they buy you with a little something, but the country is going to descend to the depths of Haiti if this government remains in power. So for your own good labor rights, and for all of us, if we're together save our country, we have to get rid of this government. But a new government must use the CBI properly. We have to finish because we have very little time, a year or two to go again. Make sure we finish some of the road projects that they have going. Some of the projects in themselves are not bad. I mean, the road projects are good. I love them. I want them to finish. But the truth is, often when those are supported by the CBI, then if they were to spend, if the project would have cost 20 million, the real cost is 20 million, they end up spending 40. So you could get 2 roads for 1. Again, why we need to remove them quickly. But a new government needs to ensure that every cent for the remaining time we have, we use it properly to finish the infrastructure, the roads we're already doing. Those are important. If at all these guys are really serious about the airport and there is enough money to come in there, apply to the airport and definitely apply to debt. These are, to my mind, the most important things because we have only a limited time to go for the CBI. Now, if it happens that the CBI continues longer, then you're still putting yourself in a good position if you were to do those things. And once you go to correct other things, then you continue to use the CBI for those critical things, but never get to a point again where the CBI gets so important to us, even for meeting our recurrent expenditure, that if it were to go, we'd be in trouble. None of the other countries are in that position. St. Kitts is not in that position. St. Lucia is not in that position. Antigua is not in that position. They have used it, although some of these countries may have been corrupt too, but they were not they were maybe the 10-90 and not the 90-10. I don't know if people remember what that is. When the Al Jazeera report said, one of the guys said, he have seen corruption in his life. And he have seen corruption where people take 10% for themselves, but they give the country back 90%. But he have never seen corruption like he have seen in Dominica, where these guys take 90% and give the country 10%. So I am not saying corruption maybe don't exist in the other countries like St. Kitts and so on, but clearly you're seeing the results. They are paying down debt. They are using it for, to support the economy during COVID time and so on. And they're in a much better position to survive. It definitely doesn't account for the core of their recurrent expenditure. So the new government, we have to make sure we spend on these things urgently. And then we have to begin to prepare for the eventuality that we are going to lose the CBI, which means we need to be talking to the IMF. Unfortunately, we have to, because once the CBI goes, unless you get some support from the IMF, from the World Bank, from others, you won't be able to pay all your staff. You won't be able to, because a lot of that comes from the CBI right now. Certainly some of the social programs you won't be able to do. So a new government has to be able to prepare for that. Even our governments in waiting, we have to begin to think through those things, because we are going, when we lose the CBI in a year or two, we're going to need some financing support from institutions and countries. We need to be establishing good relationship with the US or the UK, because they would have understood what this government was doing, and they may have a sympathetic ear when a new government comes to say, boy, we understood, because they are watching this government. And some of them want this government to be done away with. We know that. People have spoken to us, we know. But I mean, they cannot just come and interfere just like that. So they are longing for this government to go. So a new government coming in, we may have sympathetic ears from the US, from the UK, and so on. People who will say, we understand what you're going, we will help you until you get back onto your foot. But we definitely have to begin to prepare for when we lose the CBI. And then the whole issue of planning that our good friend mentioned, the integrated planning, all that's important. Now, I'm not saying that there are no plans in this government. I've read a few of their plans, and some of the plans have some good things. I have to say that. But the same issue, just like some of the budgets have good things, the same issues, lack of capacity, lack of proper implementation structures, right? So we have to maybe revisit the plans, even using the plans that they have, going back to some of the plans that were suggested in the past, use what they already have that's good, and adopt a solid plan for going forward. That has to be part of it. It's based on a solid plan too. You're going to get assistance or more assistance from foreign countries, and more assistance even from the CDB and the World Bank. These countries are sometimes prepared to do more, but they're not prepared to do so much with a corrupt government, because trust me, they will not go on the air and say this government is corrupt. But when I meet them in the alleyways, they tell me that. I know that. Okay? I used to work I was in the system, so I know. Okay? They won't openly criticize, they will be very diplomatic on what they write in the IMF report. But I used to sit with them, not on Dominica specifically, but I used to sit with them. So I know what they say. I know the countries that they praised, and I know the countries that their hands were tied, they couldn't say anything. But it's not like they're supportive of this government. So a new government will be. So we have to begin to prepare for that. And then, so the planning is important, and the planning systems are especially important. I think we have covered some of that already, but these are critical solutions going forward. Not for this government. If they can do it, I would welcome it. If they really want to turn around from what they have been doing, from the fact that they have been not been doing the right thing and been corrupt, if they want to turn around from that, I am willing to help them. And I'm sure Bernard would be, as long as we are convinced that, and I'm sure Thompson would be, and all of us who know better can be done would be willing to help. But we don't think they would want that, right? But you have to have the proper planning, so a proper plan and proper planning system. That's important. And bringing in the people, as I'm just saying, we have skills. Sheridan, you said it. There are people with skills everywhere. Dominicans who have done well, Dominicans who have excelled in every area, be it health, be it economics, be it finance, be it even some of the new areas, biotechnology, all fields, because we have Dominicans are very brilliant people. We all know that. Our basic education foundation was solid. We go over there, we do well. Bernard, you know that very well. You have been getting students in the past to get scholarships or whatever. And so we know our students do well, and then they get employed and they contribute to the US and so on. So we know we have people out there who can perform, and people here who can perform. So a new government has to be mindful that we have to get the right skills in. Now, I know too that there are some people right here, because I've spoken to some of them, within our government, who are also capable. But why are they not delivering? Because they're not motivated and they're not given the space to function. That's the truth. I don't want to call specific organizations, but I've spoken to some pretty good people who are here within. I'm talking about the civil servants now, who have been trained. Maybe they don't have all the experience, but they are trainable. And if you pair them with some of us who have more experience, these people can excel. I have spoken to some of them, I know that, but they don't have the space. They have been frustrated. So they just have to keep quiet and do nothing. And, so that is the challenge we're having. So we have to get the right skills. So our new government has to be dedicated to giving the civil servants who are here right now this space to excel, the opportunity to contribute, and pair them, bring other people from the diaspora or those of us who are here. I'm willing to help to work and build our capacity. I mean, I have been recently speaking to a few countries, but I'm amazed. If we take a country like Barbados, and you begin to talk to the people who are in the public sector agencies, in the export agencies and the import agencies, and even those in the associations and so on. I mean, you begin to realize these people are capable people. And they have the space to function. They have been given this space to function. When they make ideas, these ideas are embraced. There's no attempt to be corrupt or to turn the ideas and to seek to see what they can get out of it. And you see these countries are growing. I'm amazed. I mean, I've been speaking with some folks in Barbados recently, and I'm amazed to see the trajectory on which they're on. I mean, all of us in the Caribbean are going through this difficult time with COVID. All of us are going through it. But the countries that are going to do best are those who are thinking, who have the right people in place. And I'm telling you, from discussions I have had with some people, they are thinking well, but we don't have that in Dominica. You see, so these are things a new government we have to put in place very quickly. And once we have a proper plan, you understand our strengths, understand a particular strategy, and you begin to have a proper system for building that out. That's why your planning system is important. Then you will begin to find areas of strength that you need to work on. And clearly we have some areas of strengths, all right? But clearly we have to begin to attract investors, because that's one of the other big issues. We have to focus on how we bring investors in to build on those strengths and to build on those opportunities. And so right now, part of our problem is a reputation problem. Investors don't want to come. That will begin to change when we get better governance. And that's why one of the biggest things we can do is change this government, because investors are going to show more interest. The only investors we are getting are CBI. It's a fact. I don't have to create anything for anybody to know that. Now, the persons who invest in CBI are not interested in investing. They're interested in a passport. That means fundamentally people are not interested in Dominica because of the corrupt government and because we have not created the environment for businesses to survive and to succeed. We have not. So we have to begin to to have a good plan that's helping to create the environment, put the right systems in place, bring the right people in. We begin to create a better environment for the investors to be interested, target the investors. But part of the investors we need to look at are some of us in the diaspora who may be able to bring in some of our resources. We have to have the right structures for them to invest. We also have to pull some of the investors right here. We have to create clusters among some of our businesses. So there is a lot we can do. I know what time is.
But fundamentally, Kent, because it comes down to, understanding our strengths, our weaknesses, right? As you would agree, and identifying the potentials we have right here within ourselves to create those values. And that is what is just not being done. We don't have a Sherman plan. We don't have a plan for our vision. We don't have a plan of how to invest in the things. And that is what we must do. It's about creating, and not just that. We have to actually set up objectives, and we have targets, and we have to have this country managed as is a business enterprise. Right. We have to have accountability. We have to show this quarter, what have you accomplished on the plan?
That's right.
Show me the results. Not just show me, we're talking about the results. I want to see the results.
Yes.
I want to see the better outcome. I want to see the increased healthcare every quarter, and in a transparent manner. That has to be front and center. My fellow Dominicans, here's the report card for this quarter. Here's the report card for this year. That is what a government needs to do to transform our country. We need to hold people accountable.
Let me add one more thing to that.
Objective goals.
Before we close, let me add one more thing to that. We have to create a country that's really respected. I'm going to give you a good example of that. A country that people want to come to.
Before you go into that, Kent, let me just add this. Let me just build a little bit on what Bernard was saying. One of the things you can rest assured, Bernard, is that within the next 6 months, we'll be going back to the Parliament for supplementary appropriation. Right? What does that tell us? Where was the vision? Where was the planning? To all the projects and ideas that you had there. Why is it that your estimates are so bad that within 6 months, you're going to go back there and ask for 25, 30, 40% more? And remember, we're doing that against the background that our national debt is all the way up to 1.5 million. Now, let us not, just to illustrate what I'm talking about, we talk about debt to GDP ratio and so on and so on. Let us not forget that when this government came in, the national debt was about what, 300 something million, $400 million. And look at what it is today. I mean, I remember there was a lot of talk about the high level of debt that the government at that time left behind. And today we're at 1.5. Now, where are we going to be in 6 months' time? Are we going to be at 1.6, $1.75 million? The point is this. We are running out of time. We're fooling ourselves. We have an artificial situation now where our budget is supported artificially by the CBI revenues, which will run out. It is not going to be ad infinitum. It has a finite time span. It will run out. Within that time that we have left with it, if we do not do something to redirect those revenues into those sectors. Now, remember, the first premise is that we have to have good governance that understands that in order to be able to do that. But if this government does not redirect a lot of the CBI revenues into establishing the strong foundation to really build a sustainable economy, like the major pillars, like our agriculture, and people talk about all kind of components like shipping and so on. These are real factors. And like our agribusiness, this is what's going to give us the sustainability, using our natural endowments, our natural resources, and including our human resources, looking at our knowledge economy. In other words, if we do not do that, then we're going to have a problem, because what we're doing now is not sustainable. It has not been sustainable for the last how many years, because every year we go back to Parliament for more and more supplementary appropriations, but we always want more because for some reason our estimates are so bad. I'm not sure what is going on, but I mean,
because they're ad hoc. They're ad hoc. It's just throw something on the wall and see what sticks. Oh, I need some more. It's not strategic. So Yes, they're going to come back and forth in an ad hoc manner. And they're proud of the fact, actually, they tout this. If you look at the budget, they're proud of the fact of the CBI monies coming in. They should be ashamed that more than half the budget is provided by non-productive activity, which is simply selling our citizenship rights. They should be ashamed of this fact. What they should be saying is every year, the percentage of the budget and that is being supported by the CBI funds are going down. That's the right metric. That now we're down to 20% of our budget of our being supported by the CBI funds. But in fact, they have so distorted reality that they make Dominicans praise the fact that the CBI funds are going up and the percentage of the budget that it covers is going up. But that's exactly the wrong metric. And so they give the wrong metrics here. And wrong metrics, if you get the wrong metrics, you're going to have the wrong outcomes. The metric should be what percentage of the CBI funds are funding capital investment projects or human capital formation projects that are building an economic engine. We should have a metric that says we raised X amount of money and that percentage of it went to develop an economic engine, and here's the outcomes. And every year, that spillover effect is growing our economy so rapidly that the portion represented by CBI funds is shrinking. And that is the proper metric that we need to have.
And to add to that, Bernard, what you're supposed to see, once you invest those CBI funds in those major sectors, you begin now to measure. So you have to have a yardstick to measure the outcome, the output, the productivity of those sectors. Because then what you have sectors that are sustainable, and you can now see how they are improving in their productivity, improving in their contribution to your GDP, improving in terms of their contribution to your wages,
spilling over into other sectors,
and showing how it's contributed to the generation of wealth, and basically creating a stable economy. All right. So Kent, so this is the point, Kent. See, that is where we're heading in terms of a solution. But I think we're saying that everybody seems to be saying that in order for us to get to that point, we have to have a total different mindset in our governance and need a whole new governance shift, a whole new paradigm shift in our governance.
Yes. So that is the fundamental part of it. But I wanted to give one more thing that a new government has to do. So the situation is urgent. It's going to crash soon unless we do something. And we outlined already some of the things that we need to pay attention to immediately. Right. But one of the things the new government would have to also understand is that our reputation, we have said it in several ways, is in tatters. And we're going to have to repair that quickly. But the reason I'm saying this is because I'm reminded of a development, a story, not a story, but an occurrence in Barbados. With the international business sector, many countries were classified as tax havens. Okay, so the international business sector in many countries suffered from all the strategies and the policies of the OECD to try to control tax evasion. Okay, and they blacklisted a number of countries, including Barbados, including some of the big players in the offshore business. And then the OECD, under the new framework, they encourage countries to get off that list, to switch to a new framework. So Barbados was one of the countries that switched to what is now called a nominal tax jurisdiction. So rather than considered a tax haven, they're now a nominal tax jurisdiction. The way they did that was to remove the discrimination in corporate tax. So everybody pays 5%, whether you're local or whether you're onshore. But there was a whole change of legislation. All the major tax jurisdictions had to do it if they wanted to survive and come off of that list. So Barbados and a number of the bigger ones, 12 or so, switched to nominal tax jurisdictions. And in doing so, because people were the people who were attracted to that sector, part of the thing is that they were coming to enjoy the benefits of the tax holiday, or not just the tax holiday, but the differential tax treatment. So you got a lower tax compared to local companies. And then, of course, that tax is much lower than your own country that you come from. So there was a big incentive to move to those jurisdictions. So Barbados, when Barbados shifted, there were a few companies, of course, who moved from the destination because they no longer had that advantage. But there were very few that moved. Many remained. You know why many of them remained? They didn't. So the sector is still flourishing because it was a well-run country, well-respected country, well-regulated country, a country with strong education. What they found was that the benefits that they still had from remaining in Barbados was worth staying, and most of them stayed. So the fact is, you've got to create, you've got to continue building an economy. You've got to use the CBI to create a situation where even after the CBI is gone, your country is still attractive and even more attractive. That's the lesson from all of that. But these guys are not doing any of that. Right? If anything, they're making the country worse off. But a new government, we have to focus on creating that kind of image for the country that people will want to come here, want to do business here. We have to desperately create that image and invest in bring in people.
Well, Kent, there's no doubt about that. I mean, Bernard, we all will agree that that's the way to go. I mean, what you really ought to do, you need to divert those funds away from the hotel building thing exclusively and build the sectors that are sustainable.
Right.
You understand?
That's correct.
You still want to strengthen tourism, but you want now to be in a position where it's not just investors from the CBI that's interested. That they are
you see, Kent, once you build these other sectors, your agriculture sector, your agribusiness sector, they're going to take on a life of their own, which is what had happened in the past. They're going to take on a life of their own because the manufacturing sectors, these things not supposed to have anything to do with government. Once the private sector gets going, it's on a roll. It does. As a matter of fact, the private sector, to a large extent, wants government to stay off his back. Just leave it alone, let it do its business. And the private sector will be out there generating for itself. Once you put it up on a solid foundation and give it the space, create the enabling environment, give it the regime of incentives that are required for it to thrive and for it to be internationally competitive. Because let's not fool ourselves. Once you are producing anything at all, it has to be international, because some of the goods that you're going to produce, they'll be on the shelves at Whitchurch. They'll be shelves by Fresh Market and Asifans and so on. So any of those things you produce have to be international, because you're going to compete with those things right on the shelves at home in some cases. So you have to ensure, if you start from the markets and come back, that's what the private sector does. Start from the market and all the way come back to your unit cost of production to ensure that you have the margins that make you competitive and sustainable, right? So when we talk about diverting some of those resources into those specific areas like manufacturing, like agribusiness, what the private sector will do, because it will have the human capacity that has the experience and the expertise to know this is what we have to do with this money to ensure that we are sustainable. That has nothing to do with the government. All the government has to do is look at what, as you said, in Barbados and some other countries, let us divert these funds into this. Let's not take this money and just give it to people for fees and commission. That's not going anywhere. That's going somewhere else. It's not being, reinvested in the country. Let us do something. Yes, Bernard.
Yeah, and I do support that we have to do work in the tourism economy, Ken. That's always be an important component to Dominica's economy. But I do not believe we can build an economic engine around tourism per se, because really tourism is also something that is almost like an export crop, a monocrop. If anything goes wrong, you're in trouble. Plus, I do not believe fundamentally we need to grow an economy around serving people drinks and food. We want to create value. We don't simply want to be able to add a country that extracts value from people who create value for the global economy. And the only value we add there is by serving them some nice drinks, right? There's nothing wrong with that as an addition to our economy, but I want us to fundamentally change how we think about our small island states and us as Afrocentric people. We need to be global players. And
Yeah.
global players create the fundamental value, not simply rely on things like secondary services like
Yeah,
secondary
but
and so forth.
I would put it differently though. I wouldn't put it that way. I wouldn't quite agree with the way you're putting it. What I would say is this, and if you look at the experience of international development, you start and you use whatever it is at the time you can be competitive in, whatever it is. Okay? And then often what you find happen is this, there are linkages that you build. So for instance, again, let me go back to Barbados. Barbados built a very successful tourism industry. And they continue to try to develop the tourism industry because it has served them well and they continue. But they're also using the fact the tourism industry provides them with a jumping pad because it has become such a service-oriented economy. It provides the perfect space or the perfect institutions and cultures for them to jump into other service areas. So they have gone into business processing. Some of the same things that serve tourism well serve some of these other industries well. So sometimes you use your strength and you build on that strength to integrate vertically, to horizontally, you do whatever. So I would say part of our strength in Dominica right now is being the nature land in the Caribbean. Part of our strength is the fact that we have a product that can sell well in terms of tourism. I would not say let's not push it, and I myself
No.
personally am pushing it.
I don't think any of us is saying that we must neglect our tourism. Certainly, I think we'll develop our tourism based on what you see in our nature island concept. But we have to go back and look at our natural endowments. Barbados has its own natural endowments, the beaches and so on and so on. The flat country, they have beaches and whatnot. We have our own natural endowments. I mean, our product is totally different from the Barbados product. Our market, therefore, is different from the Barbados market. All right. So we have to build on what we have. I don't think we should discuss. In fact, matter of fact, we should keep supporting and encouraging and expanding our tourism sector.
Exactly. That's the point I'm making.
Our adventure tourism sector, certainly, yes.
It's soft adventure, right? But I agree with that. But
I personally don't believe it should be the core. I don't believe it is the sustainable core for the future. And if you look at all the Caribbean islands, they have perennially suffered from having a Caribbean tourism product at its core. We have to get more sophisticated in our economic development models. We do not have to simply retain in a primary industry. And tourism is a primary industry. You bring people in, they pay some money, It's just basically a transplanted plantation economy, except now the crops are tourists. So I think we have to transform. I think our greatest asset is the Dominican mind.
The people.
Great intellectual capacity we have shown on the global stage, that far more than our endowments of rivers and streams is our greatest asset. Now, of course, we use that to transform our tourism product. It has to be a good part of it. But so I'm not disagreeing if you can, but I'm saying I fundamentally think we have to reimagine Dominica as a knowledge economy and go for it with all strength and everything hands off that.
No, again, I don't belabor the point, but all of that is fine.
Here's what I'm saying. Here's what I'm saying. Right? I believe we have to build our economy around our people. Because you see, once you develop your people and your people feel free now to explore, use their mental capabilities, you'd be surprised. The sky is the limit. They'll think about the knowledge economy. They'll think about the agriculture. They'll think about the agribusiness. They'll think about the tourism. The sky is the limit. Because they're now looking to be internationally competitive, building on the unique products that we have.
But do you know there's a process to what you're saying?
Well, yes, there's a process.
So it's not going to happen overnight, right?
There is a process to everything. We don't have time to go through all of that tonight. We only have 2 more minutes left. But here's the thing. I mean, we're on good track here. I think what we're saying here tonight from all of this.
We're in alignment. Yeah.
Yes, we are in alignment. What I think we're saying, in order for us to accomplish any of that, we have to have the proper governance. We have to have people in place who understand these issues, understand the importance of planning, understand the clearly defined mission and the goals and the long-term plans, so that whatever you do today is contributing. Whatever you do for the next 12 months is contributing to the overall plan, that you want to be sustainable, that you want to keep building and growing and building on it. In other words, you should not be doing all kind of things now which are not ending up in the growth plan. You're not contributing to the growth plan that you have. So that 5 years down the road, you check in your records and you say, wait a minute, I look back and I didn't really accomplish anything here or there or there or there. You want to be able to look at and use your yardstick that you're going to use for measurement and be able to measure the results that you have, to look at your productivity, look at your revenue streams, look at where all of this is. In other words, you must be able to see, just like any corporation, you must be able to see where your revenue is coming from and how well you manage your costs and how well you use the natural resources that you had, in order to get the results. I'm saying it has to be fundamentally built around people, because I just find that, what are we doing this for? You're doing to help your people, to build your people, to make them, a better quality of life, better living standards, develop. Why should anybody be so poor and so, there's so much mendicancy. Why should people be that way, that they have to depend on somebody to help them pay a light bill? I think we have to move to a point where we can do better than that. That's the point I'm making.
No, I fully agree with you. But maybe another program, because sometimes we have to get into some of the details. And I have been, in a sense, very fortunate to observe some of the details in many countries.
But let's not go into details tonight.
No, I'm not going into it tonight. I'm just saying it would be nice sometimes to get a program where we get.
We will do that. We will do that.
But details are important. Details are very important. So I will say that much.
I promise you that we'll do that. Because I know that there's people like yourself and Bernard, our good friend Ronald Lander, and our good friend Thompson Fontaine, and all these guys, they have the capacity to work out some of those details. We can sit around and work out details, but everybody's telling us, guys, the fundamental thing is that if you have to implement anything like that, you have to do something about your governance.
Yes, that is most fundamental.
You need to have a change of the mindset.
Yes, I think every thinking Dominican knows that in their heart, and I think many labor supporters know that in their heart, that we've run the course with this government. It's the same old story over and over again, the same old controversies, the same old things. I mean, I think every thinking Dominican, whether they say it or not, realizes that the biggest impediment to progress is this management team, and that's often the case, even in business. Sometimes you remove an entire management, you bring in a turnaround team who turns things around pretty quickly, because the biggest impediment is the cultural, the way they look at it, the set of ideas that they bring to the table, the lack of innovation, the different experiences, and they're just simply not up to the task. And this government is simply not up to the task of developing Dominica. Dominica is a unique place with unique capabilities, with unique challenges, with big challenges. You need a top-notch turnaround team to take Dominica to the next level. It's exciting, it's possible, it's doable, but we do not have that turnaround team there right now. Certainly, maybe they could have been, who knows? But the path that they have gone down in terms of the incentives and the self-serving nature of their mindset that has become calciferized, has become fossilized. It's very difficult to change that mindset and to change those investing structures and all the dirt that you need to keep covered. It's almost impossible for them now to transform themselves into this holistic, progressive, visionary government. It's just not possible anymore. The only way out is to remove this government and to get the right people in the right seats on the right bus, so we can drive this thing down to that future that we always know is possible.
And Kent, just to give you the last word, I believe that as a good economist, if you see us go back to the parliament within the next 6 months and ask for another $200 million, you say, I told you so. You're on the wrong track.
Yes.
Right?
Definitely.
But this is what has been happening for years.
Yep. So we will not be surprised. We will not be surprised at all.
That is been very consistent.
Yeah. And I mean, that was one of the thoughts that hit my mind, and we have mentioned it here. So you see all these ideas thrown in there. Some of the ideas in themselves are not bad, but you could clearly see that there is not a proper planning, that they haven't counted the costs yet, that they haven't properly costed those things. If they were to do it and they truly realize the cost, they'll be running back for supplementary. So we won't be surprised, because you could see it in the way the whole budget is pieced together. You could see there is not a careful, proper thinking out of this thing. So we wouldn't be surprised about that at all. Yeah. And one more thing, I see the budget. I have to say this one last bit. The other thing I see is in-your-face corruption right in the budget. They have successfully built in programs that they're going to use for electioneering, and they have put it right in the budget. So the future youth program, is going to be an electioneering tool. They said that they were going to try to get 10 persons to invest in for agriculture, but it's going to be dear people, corruption. They on the surface of it, somebody might read it, but when you know the practice of this government, you know that they are budgeting corruption.
The 700 new homes, you can know this is definitely.
So here's a good question for both of you. I'm hearing the talk about building homes that young people can buy. The government building homes and subsidizing them so that the young people can buy them. But Kent and Bernard, we've had the experience where millions of dollars reportedly have been placed in the aid bank for farmers and bus drivers to access. And for some reason, they said the interest rate was low and so on, but they've not been able to access it. The money is still there. Now, is that going to be the same thing with what we're talking about, these homes for the young people? Will they be able to afford to pay for them? I mean, a lot of young people who are coming out of school, university and so on, they have a lot of debt sometimes, student loans and all that. Will their salaries that they'll be able to get in Dominica, if they're going to be working in Dominica, I'm assuming.
If they can get a job at all.
If you can get a job at all, will they be able to afford to pay these mortgages? And how are they going to raise the down payment? Now, these banks obviously have to be careful because they have to be inspected by the central bank, and that so their loan portfolio has to be, solid enough. I mean, are they going to just make these loans willy-nilly and just give people loans even if they don't qualify and they know that their income will not be able to meet the required installments? Even if somebody else were to give them a deposit, it means that they did not have the ability, capacity to raise a deposit. So it means that somebody has to give them a deposit, and then will they be able to? So it seems to me that we have to rethink a lot of those things because it's important for young people to own housing. But I think what is going to be key is that they must have the income to be able to afford it. There's no point telling them you're going to get a house and to ensure that they have the jobs that give them the income to make it affordable for them within their means. Your thoughts on that, Bernard, as we go?
Yes, I mean, there are two things wrong with this picture. First off, the 700 jobs are going to be used, as Kent was saying, and we all know, as political handouts, gimmicks, supporters. If there's 700 homes, I'm confident 600 plus homes will go to Labour Party young people supporters, right? That's going to do two things. It's going to disincentivize other young people who are like, why should I work hard? Why should I try to form a small business? Why should I study here? When look at this guy who never did anything productive, who never think, all he did was be a Porto laborite, and there he goes, he's got a house. And I have to work hard, kill myself, spend many years, develop a thing. It creates disincentives for hard work, productivity, and for ambition. It really does. And I speak to lots of people who says, boy, this handled things. I get mad about that. I've been working all my life to try to put a nice home together, and this guy goes to support the government, and they're giving him one right next door to me, and it negates all the focused effort that I've put into getting where I am today, and so forth. So these homes are not only not going to be given out right and fairly, they're also going to create bad blood, disincentives, and negativity throughout our society and community. 700 homes. This is going to create some real bad outcomes, and that's not been talked about. The only thing they're talking about is we're going to build homes. But as I said, we know this government operates. This is not going to be a fair process. It's going to lead to bad blood, bad outcomes, negativity in the community, so loss of social cohesion. The other thing on these things is that those, instead of creating 700 homes, why the heck doesn't this government take the money and create 700 well-paying jobs? Why doesn't the government take the money? He's getting the cart before the horse. Instead of, is homes the real big problem in Dominica? Everything is homes and structures. No, the problem is sustainable, well-paying jobs that people can be proud of and build their homes, buy their cars on their own. It's not the homes, Mr. Prime Minister. It's the jobs. It's the economic wealth. So why are you putting all this money and all this effort into building 700 homes when you could create 700 21st century jobs that would transform many parts of the island? If you
Well,
want to do well, that's what you need to do.
Just to add to what you're saying, for example, if you were to create these 700 jobs, where people really, the jobs are paying so well, these people don't need anybody to build. No, because they will have the capacity to build their own home. Because the important thing is not really to give a man a fish, is to teach him how to fish. Now, if this man can fish and is able to catch enough fish, he'll be all right. So I think it is more important, and we've seen it already. We see it happening in Dominica right now. So many people are graduated and they can't come to the country to get a job, so they migrate, they go back. And so we don't want to keep repeating that. We are losing too much of our human resource to other countries. So it seems to me you're right. The most important thing, as I said, all budgeting and as we are on people. So people is what matter, and you have to ensure that people have the incomes that they can afford to improve their own standard of living and their quality of life. Kent, let's try to, yeah.
Yes, indeed. So that's the thing. The thing is, they sometimes also succeed in appealing to people's basic instinct, and that's where we have to reason with our people. So what we were talking about a while ago, they would depend on the fact that, people will say, oh, but I don't want me to get a house. Oh, but I don't want my grandmother to get $300. So they focus on these social things that they know people so want. And if somebody else would say, do this instead, people will say, no, I want my home. But we really have to get the conversation to our people to make them understand. Ultimately, these things you will have those things, yes, but ultimately what you really want, as Bernard was saying, are the jobs, is a solid economy, the dignity. So we have to appeal to people's minds to drive home these messages. But the truth is, Dominica, we can go places, but not under this government, not with bad governance. And I think the majority of us, I know, the majority of Dominicans understand that already, as I said at the beginning, because the majority of Dominicans who are in Dominica have rejected this government. They have clearly rejected this government. And I think more and more people are understanding what's happening. I've spoken to a couple of laborites who supported the government before, and their eyes are open and they're seeing what's going on. And this government is not going to get their support anymore, because these people are coming out of the party mode and they're beginning to see it's now about the nation, it's now about the country, and they're now going to do the right thing for the country. So we're going to have even a greater number of persons than we had even last elections, of persons who realize that we are going down the wrong path, that we need to change directions. But the only way this government was able to stay on board was to cheat, to steal, right? To import votes. That's the only way. Now the CCJ has made an opinion on that. And hopefully the rest of the region will have heard that, and they would realize what's going on in Dominica. And I want to say to all Dominicans that on the strength of the CCJ, it gives us hope, and it gives us strength too, to begin to insist that this government must not again steal elections, that the will of the people must be allowed to go through, that we must be able to choose a government who can move the country forward. And we did that in the past, but it was frustrated by cheating and by importation of votes. That must not happen again. I'm appealing to everyone. It's our responsibility to make sure it doesn't happen again. The unions, it's our responsibility. The churches, it's our responsibility. Right? All the civil service organizations, it's our responsibility. The public service officers, it's our responsibility. The policemen, it's our responsibility. All of us have to rise to the occasion and say, if we ever doubted, we just have to listen to what the CCJ say, and we'll understand. We knew it already, but more of us are coming to that opinion. But we now need to all join forces, political parties, trade unions. It's no longer a matter of a party thing. It's now all of us wanting to save our nation. The most fundamental thing now to save our country is to remove this government. And I say that without no reservation. That is, all of us know it. All of us know it. That's what we need to do. So let's together do it. It's not about Freedom Party. It's not about UWP. It's not about any one of us individually. It's now about our country, we can go forward. But we're in trouble right now. We need to get out of that trouble. We got to come together to ensure that there's electoral reform, to ensure that this government does not steal elections anymore, to ensure that we can get the change in governance that we wanted and we voted for the last time but was frustrated. And now even more so, more of us want it. Let's make sure as a people we make this happen this time around.
Thanks much, Ken. Thanks much, Bernard. You remember in my opening remarks, I did include a brief word about the CCJ. Where do we go from here? Are we going to heed the advice of the CCJ? They're telling us something. You talk about diplomacy. I thought that was a very diplomatic statement. They're telling us hey, you have a problem. You need to fix it. So thank you very much, Bernard. Thank you very much, Ken. Thank you so much, all the folks on Facebook who are still with us. Many of you have gone to bed by now, I'm sure. And many of you are listening to us wherever you are in Dominica, far and wide. Thank you, Lambi. Thank you, Sherwin. And let me just say good night to all of our listeners. Good night, everybody. Good night, Kent.
Good night, bro.
Good night. Let's keep fighting. Let's keep fighting, everyone listening and everyone on the panel here. We have
so I want to apologize for Lennox and Thompson who were not able to make it tonight. Good, very, very, very good reasons. So next time I'm sure we'll have them on board with us. We'll probably have even a livelier conversation.
Okay, great.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
All right, good.
Yeah, Lambi.
My window, and I'm a thinking of tomorrow, and I'm a wondering what the future will be. Thinking of the children who are the victims of oppression, beaten down by wars and eaten up by starvation. I'm saying, when there's ugly will be over, and the children can go out and play. I wanna see when all oppression will be done, and the people will rise up and say, freedom at last, freedom at last, so free. Freedom has come. Freedom has come. Oh yeah. Shall have certain in seclusion. I'm in my meditation, and I can hear the voice of the sufferers cry for justice. Ooh. Another ugly war is a raging, threats of nuclear war is arising, and the world is gripped by fear of mass destruction. I'm saying, when there's ugly war be over, and the children can go out and play. I wanna see when all oppression will be done, and the people